They're going to be exiting the tournament.
Yeah, he's going out quite quickly.
As a Claymore goes down.
This is possibly the biggest upset we've ever had in the tournament.
Particularly good trade.
It's starting to go down now, but too little, too late.
The Sleipnir is MJTing himself out of the arena.
Yeah, as the Hugin goes down.
He just got volleyed through there.
They're just ripping them to shreds right now.
Starfleet is down.
Here you will find the bedraggled, good-for-nothing masses of Capsuleers, all vying for a chance to be taken seriously. Here you will find organisations that couldn't rub together more ISK than your average faction warfare corporation. You will find pilots who, when faced with adversity and true challenge, will likely turn and run faster than the big blue donut. You will find the hordes of F1 button-mashing pilots whose idea of PvP is nothing but being a minion who worships false gods they call their leaders. Not to mention those who don't feel comfortable unless they're in the biggest ships surrounded by 1,000 of their friends. Groups that think they're actually good at combat yet howl around in packs. They only pick on the weak, oppressed and vulnerable. Which piece of trash will bubble to the top of this steaming cauldron of mediocrity? This is the Alliance Tournament
Open Practice.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Alliance Tournament 17 Open Series here on EVNT. This is week number 6, and I am your host, Ithaca Hawk, joined by a smorgasbord of talent and beautiful people. In the booth tonight with me, we have Mr. BayArtJ pushing the buttons and doing the nice fancy camera moves with his 3D mouse. Man's got a very, very wrinkly brain. We've got DTM135, who's here to tinkle us with his North American accent. We've got Mr. General Stargazer, who will be refereeing. He'll be pushing the buttons and moving the teams around. We have Mr. Jin Tan. I can't see him, but I assume he's wearing some sort of suit. And, of course, we have Moderator also dropping all the way in from NA. And welcome. This is a very exciting episode tonight. This is the final episode of our Opens series. This is week number 6, and there's a lot to play for. So if you missed the announcement, there is an invitational, a special EVNT Alliance Tournament Opens Invitational, which will be happening next week. And the team that wins that wins a special edition frigate, one of the prize frigates from Alliance Tournament 17. So the team that wins this open invitational can win an Alliance Tournament frigate that is so far unnamed, unreleased. No one's seen or heard of it at all. It is brand new. That is pretty damn cool. Now, there is a couple of teams who have already secured their spot by getting points from our previous weeks of this open series. By just turning up, you get 1 point. By winning a match, you get 3 points. But becoming third place, you got 4 points. Second place got 5 points. And first place, you got 10 points. So we have a whole number of teams sitting on like 15, 13 points and so on. But there is a number of teams that are playing tonight who are in for a chance. The Minions, for example, sitting on 8 points. They just have to basically win one match and they secure their place in the Invitational next week. Other teams have a lot more to play for. Hidden Leaf Village Ninja, whatever the hell the rest of their name is, they have to basically win out to have a good chance of getting in today and hope that the Minions lose. So this could be exciting, exciting, exciting. Jin Tan, are you excited?
I am really excited. There is not a single team playing today that could not be in the running for that Alliance Tournament frigate. And we all know how much those things are worth. You know, upwards in the tens, potentially even hundreds of billions of ISK that people could be looking at because these ships are so unique. It's going to be amazing to see later on potentially what some of the stats are here. These things are always absolutely ridiculous, and without the possibility of them turning up in the Alliance tournament to have to balance around, I feel like CCP has the opportunity to go unbelievably hog wild with these ships.
Yeah, it's a good point you mentioned. In Alliance Tournament 17, there are no special edition ships allowed this time, so no Itanas, no Rubisus. It's all about whatever you can normally get on Tranquility without going through the ridiculous money gate that is Alliance Tournament prize ships. But you can still win them, and they're still worth an absolute buttload of money. And if you want to take a guess at predicting what the names are going to be in Twitch chat, then let us know. What are the names for the Mordu's Legion prize ships? There's a frigate and there's a cruiser, we think. Yet to be confirmed, but that would make sense for the patterns that we know. I mean, there's all sorts of things that we've been speculating in the EVNT Discord, but I want to hear some of the other suggestions. Cancerous, Pierre says, that is a Fantastic name. I'm very happy with that. I think that's pretty much exactly right. Discreet Error, though, has got it right. It is going to be the Ithaca and the RJ. That is now canon. So thank you very much. Who else is here with me in the booth? Moderator, how are you today?
I'm doing excellent. I'm glad to be able to cast what's going to be a very exciting week of, spaceship explosions as people try to get into that top 8.
Exactly. And the thing is, though, even if they don't get into that top 8 today, then they still got a good chance of winning some cool stuff. There's a bunch of shiny skins on the line today. You win a game, you get a bunch of skins, hopefully for your team, which is pretty cool. They've been donated by an anonymous donator who wants to remain anonymous. But I think we're only a couple minutes away from our first match. So let's start talking about that. So our first match is going to be Bright Side of Death versus Local is Primary. And as we get to that match, don't forget to drop your Amazon Prime free subscription on our channel here. Feel free to follow us, like us, share our link around, and if there's a bell, which I hear there is, that's what the kids say these days, ring that bell, and I don't know, maybe something cool happens. I have no idea. DTM, this match, Bright Side of Death versus Localist Primary. What are you thinking for this one?
I'm going to have to go with Bright Side of Death. I've seen them fly in the tournament. I've always kind of liked their style. And beyond that, I think they're actually going to do particularly good with the bands that we've seen, slowly but surely getting stacked up. With the Loki gons, with the Nighthawk gone, I think that some of these other comps are going to get maybe hopefully a little bit more chance to shine. And I think Bright Side of Death is going to be able to take advantage of that.
So Bright Side of Death, one of the teams that I believe don't have any points so far in the standings, so they need to do pretty well today to secure a place in the Open Invitational next week. But there is 15 points on the line, I think, by just turning up and winning, or is it 11? I'm not entirely sure. Is it 11?
It is 10 points for a victory here. So both of these teams not only need to win this match, but they need the minions to lose or them to do at least one place better than them in the standings, because they would both be sitting on 10 or 11 points with a victory. Local is Primary can win win with tiebreakers, potentially, but Bright Side of Death need the minions to lose to be able to progress to next week.
Interesting. And I see a whole bunch of teams in local. No one's landed on grid yet, although they are starting to land right now. So we're very, very close to being able to switch to that arena and start seeing spaceships exploding. And I can guarantee that there will be explosions today with such an amazing prize on the line. A special edition frigate, an Alliance Tournament prize ship on the line. All they have to do is just basically win a couple of best of one matches. This is brutal, by the way, I should mention. These are best of ones. You lose today, you are done. You're out. You're going home. You have got nothing. It is best of one. So there's 8 teams. This round one's 4 matches. Then we go into semi-finals. There's a bronze match, and then we're straight into a best of 3 for the actual final to secure your points to get to the prize ship. But let's get ready to go to the arena. And it looks like our first match is ready to go. So Bright Side of Death versus Locals Primary, brought to you by Moderator and Yintan.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the arena. I'm here with Moderator, and we have a really interesting matchup here. Something we haven't seen yet, which is the standard Chinese variation, the Chinese variation of the Minmatar Rush setup being brought by Bright Side of Death, going up against some sort of variation on like the Abaddon comp, perhaps, in Moderator. What's your thoughts on this Localist Primary comp?
Yeah, Localist Primary choosing to go very heavy with those Typhoons. I didn't quite get a chance to see what weapon systems they have, but also being backed up by 3 Oracles and 2 Mauler, going very heavy on just all-out damage here.
Yeah, there's a lot of EHP on the field there. You can see just how large that light blue bar is for Localist Primary, and that represents their passive EHP. They don't quite have the EHP of everything else with a burst, actually, as Logistics Frigate, which is normally a shield ship, whereas Bright Side of Death here, they have 2 Scalports, so they're going to have a lot more sustain. And wow, that Oracle there of Gucci going into Hull immediately as this fight starts. Looks like he's got an XL ASB, but it's not going to be enough to deal with the massive amounts of DPS coming out here.
Yeah, but it may very well be worth it. We see that Gucci and now Grunt are getting just demolished, but look at Grouser and his Sleipnir just getting absolutely eviscerated. I like the call of Oracles being primaried here.
What's this split fire, though? They're letting these oracles get off so many XLASB charges. Wait, this is way more EHP that they're just adding, and they're splitting off on this burst as well. What's going on here?
Yeah, I can understand the burst, at least with the smaller ships. We see now the Sleipnir of some Russian name I won't be able to pronounce going down into Hull, getting another ASB, and he pops as well. Just an absurd amount of damage on both teams. We saw Grunt Kato drop. And, I mean, I'm kind of liking Local as primary in this position.
Yeah, it looks like they're doing well. They've taken 2 out of 5 of the main DPS ships off the field here for Bright Side of Death. And the thing is, though, they haven't put any pressure yet on these scalpels. We do see newts coming out from these typhoons, so they're going to be useful later on in this match. But things are starting to slow down here now. We haven't got the same tackle going on, and it looks like Krilliko is getting off his XLSBA charges. Without those oracles on the field, they just can't quite front load the damage in the same way.
Yeah, so speaking of front-loaded damage, it seems like the Typhoons, they appear to be rapid heavy fit. So they're going to all be on reload after having showed through those Sleipnirs. So we're going to see now some damage go onto those Spiples. And then a second here, once those heavies are reloaded, we're seeing Krilliko take an appreciable amount of damage, likely kinetic, as we see Krillik drop pretty quickly. But Major Jenkins is also getting chunked pretty hard.
Yeah, and it looks like he's got an XLASB fit as well. You can see there his shield wrapping up, even though there's no burst left alive on this grid. This is going to be just a flat DPS race here now that at the end of this match. The Zvipple there getting caught and killed, I think, by the Maulers somehow in the back line. Surprising given how much tackle is still left on the field there for Bright Side of Death, maybe a miscommunication. But Major Jenkins is dropping fast. 2 broadswords left on the field to take him down, though. It's going to be difficult for them to burn through the other 2 Typhoons in time.
Well, one of the Typhoons already is down into... sorry. Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you there. Major Jenkins, we can see his AAR being able to do quite a bit of work. I mean, 2 broadswords do a lot of damage, but just every so often we see another chunk of, 10-15% of armor come back for Major. Major will drop here, but, I mean, 2 Typhoons, 2 Maulers is just better than 2 Scalpels, a Flycatcher, and 2 broadswords. Even if those Maulers do drop, it's going to be really difficult. I mean, 2 Scalpels do rep a good amount, but critically, I mean, no links for either team is going to make those Scalpel reps much less effective.
Honestly, I'm just in awe of this local as primary comp here. Like, this is reload... wow, just sniping that Scalpel off as well. That was almost instantaneous.
Yeah, the Maulers having really good presence of mind to just hit on top of Scalpels and web things, and now this lap Scalpel of the Vitalik Roar just burning for freedom as damaged drones are completely trying to follow after him. We see some heavy drones follow after and from those Typhoons and not being able to catch up. I kind of like the call here from the broadswords going after the Maulers, maybe trying to get a victory out on points, but that's not going to work anymore now that you've lost a Scalpel and your other Scalpel is down into Hull. It's going to fall, and Metalis Bartholomew now taking a good amount of damage as Naui and Damascus Kadesh reload their heavy rapid launchers.
This is great, though. Like, this is a reload tribal composition from local as primary. They've got XLASBs, they've got armor, they've got Ansel reppers, they've got rapid heavies, just maximizing the amount of burst that you can put out. I wish they had, Ansel remote reps or something like that as well. That would be the cherry on top. But unfortunately, those are banned in the AT.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, Local's primary choosing to go with a very heavy burst setup. We saw that the Sleipnirs of Bright Side of Death were immediately destroyed by those Oracles and those Typhoons, just absolutely chunking in, doing somewhere in the neighborhood of around 6,000 damage. There's not a lot of ships in the game that can survive that kind of damage, so... really interesting target calling. I like the choice of killing the Sleipnirs and getting rid of those links off of the bat. And it seems like it's paid off for them.
Yeah, just really solid execution here from Localist Primary. They were able to keep those Oracles alive for just a little longer than maybe they should, and with that, they were able to, take enough punch off the field that they were able to survive that first reload, and with that, it seemed like things just were forever in their favor. They just had so much EHP and so much potential DPS left on the field. And yeah, as Zerath points out in chat, the irony of bringing a burst in a burst comp is not lost on anyone.
Yeah, no, I thought it was pretty funny that they just decided, well, okay, so we don't really have any points left. I mean, what are we going to do? And it's like, okay, well, we'll just throw in just a Logi frigate and round out the rest of the composition with that.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if this sort of composition shows up in the actual Alliance tournament. It seems very, very risky, if your first punch doesn't work, it's something that can knock you into loser's bracket very quickly. But it is so potent against these sort of rush comps that we're seeing so much of, where people are just trying to overwhelm with offensive tackle.
Yeah, I mean, it's very frightening to be in the position where you end up basically getting more or less vibe checked by that much damage.
Yeah, with this though, Localist Primary is now tied with the minions with points. They now have 8 points, and the minions, yet to play later in this evening, have 8 points. So if the minions win, that'll put them up to 11, and they'll pull ahead. And it's going to be a question of who wins later on. Now it's just a matter of Localist Primary here racing around, trying to see if they can catch the Flycatcher. Looks like he's going for the MJD beacon, or just the Edge of Glory, perhaps. And it's cruisers on the Foons, I'm fairly sure. Oh, sorry, no, Rapid Heavies, sorry, on the Foons.
Yeah, those were Rapid Heavies.
Gosh. Sorry, slip of the tongue there. Spent the whole match talking about Rapid Heavies. There we go, though. That's the match over with a clean victory from Localist Primary. Let's head back to the studio and dissect this one, just like Localist Primary dissected Bright Side of Death.
Pew, 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 pew. Pew, pew, pew.
So the plan is that we execute a star formation with perfect 90-degree angles. You need to heat 2 cycles, not 3, 2. Spipple's web, but the Spipple's web, and we need do we need missiles or missiles, and we need thermal drone.
HiSec Buyback offers 90% GDA anywhere in HiSec. Simply go to hisec.evebuyback.com, appraise your items, create a contract, and get paid quickly.
Welcome back to the studio, ladies and gentlemen. And there you have it, Localist Primary taking it 100 points to 62 with an interesting looking comp there. Triple Typhoon, triple Oracle, triple Mauler, and a token burst rounding out their bursty damage comp. Jintan, I want to pick up on something that you said during that match there. You call that quite a risky comp, but good against these rush comps that we've seen quite a lot of so far in these opens. What makes a comp like that so risky?
Without the sustain that like a logistics cruiser or a pair of fairly strong logistics frigates offer, you don't have the sustain to stay in the match for very long, and that means that you aren't able to leverage your piloting skill quite as much. You have to execute well on your first strike in the match, and you don't get a chance to recover if that fails, and that gives you very, very little room to maneuver. All it can take is a couple of piloting mistakes or one really bad target call, and you can be out of the match completely with no chance of getting back into it. Whereas with a logistics cruiser, sometimes you can lose a key piece and tank through it and still win the match.
And DTM, looking at a comp like that, and as Jintan says, the target selection and the execution in that first strike is super important. Just how important is that initial target call? Like, what is the optimal strategy when you come in and you see a comp like they just faced there?
I think that the way that at the very beginning, calling the oracles as primary for the slep side was incredibly important. But just like Jintan said, how you call primaries and how you engage in the fight is so important. They split their DPS about halfway through the match on 3 different targets, and in my opinion, that could have been the difference between victory and failure for them. It was a really close match on both sides, and I think that this is one of those matches that really shows how important primary calling is, and listening to your FC and being heads up on the situation.
Yeah, exactly. And splitting damage like that, as you mentioned, generally not good. Generally, it's good to try and get it down because the longer those other ships are alive, the longer they're still damaging your ships, which is bad when you want to not die and you want them to die. And finally, moderator, I just want to ask you. We've spoken about how this comp is quite risky and it can run up against some comps that could just kind of dunk it. What kind of comps? If you were in a triple Typhoon, triple Oracle, triple Mauler, burst comp, and you warped in, what's the worst comp that you want to see?
Anything with really heavy tracking disruption and good projection. A lot of kind of these kitier setups, anything that can project well against you. So let's say you have a bunch of rapid heavy typhoons and these pulse oracles. Well, you get tracking disrupted, you get missile disrupted. Well, maybe your applied damage is all of a sudden just really bad, and you're then forced to close range on what are basically ships made out of paper against someone that can project and kite you, and you're going to have a really bad day. Like Jin was saying, if that initial surgical strike doesn't work, you're basically shit out of luck.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Jen, you mentioned in our production chat there about the EOS comp as well. Do you want to just chime in on that one?
Yeah, that's like kind of basically the pinnacle of what moderator's talking about, something with a lot of sustain or the ability to kind of disperse. The reason you want to bring this if you expect a rush comp is because they, to a degree, tackle themselves. They're going to be heading towards you. You don't have to worry about locking them into position and tackling them as much, and you can spend all of your points on front loading as much DPS as possible. In that match, we saw 30 points of local as primary disappear in the first, maybe 45 seconds. If that happens to most teams, that's game over. But this composition tries to facilitate that sort of quick early trading so that you can win later on in the match.
Nice. Now let's look forward to our next match. So our next match is going to be Ride My Turtle versus the Minions, and we have a very interesting scenario going on here because the Minions currently on 8 points, now tied with local as primary, although the Minions are losing the tiebreaker on match points, which is the points in terms of number of ships you've killed, 100 points being a whole match worth of ships. So right now, the Minions are not in the top 8. However, if they win this match, then they're going to jump up a decent amount of points and almost secure themselves. On the other side, Ride My Turtle, if they beat the Minions today, keeping the Minions on 8 points, they need to still win their next match against local as primary to then jump up into the top 8. So there's a lot to play for in this single match themselves. Bayart J, you're the one that came up with this this whole concept. Are you excited to see how this is playing out here? Yeah, I mean that's ideal, isn't it? That's the dream. Yeah. Just thank you to CCP for the support that they've given us in organizing these opens in terms of helping us with getting Thunderdome set up, getting everyone access to it, and just generally being around and helping us and organizing things and bringing back the Alliance tournament. But very special thanks to say thank you very much for giving us this awesome prize. It's incredible to have something that everyone can compete for. And yeah, I'm excited to see this one go all the way down to the end. Bay was talking there, by the way, and he was saying very nice things about
yeah,
CCP.
I forgot to
I'm
press
echoing
my, I
it.
forgot to my by default I mute myself, so like the chat can't hear when I'm giving like heads up to the commentators and stuff like that. But I've got to unmute himself. Apologies.
So that long silence was nice things being said about CCP. Now let us look forward again to our next match, because I see teams have now been transferred into local. So this one is going to be Ride My Turtle versus the Minions. And we've seen the Minions do quite well in a couple of other versions of this show, knocking out, I think they knocked Volta out in one of them, which was a bit of an upset at the time. But since then, they've gone on to have reasonable success in some of these tournaments. Jin Tan, Ride My Turtle versus the Minions. What are your thoughts here?
This is a really interesting matchup. I believe we have actually seen these teams play before, or at least they've played in the same events previously. It's going to be interesting. I think we're going to see Ride My Turtle play a bit more seriously now that they have something really on the line, because there's been, some very questionable composition choices, the infamous dartboard decision-making process that we've seen in open practices previously. And now with something more on the line, I think we're going to see something quite spicy here from both sides, because obviously the Minions need to win this match to secure their place in next week's matches. If they don't win, they won't be there, potentially.
On the flip side, Ride My Turtle need to win this as well. So right now, both teams need to win this match to secure their place, or at least to take a step towards securing their place in the case of Ride My Turtle. But it looks like the teams are on grid. So let's hand over to the arena. And it seems to be that the commentators for this match, Ride My Turtle versus the Minions, will be DTM and Ithaca Hawk.
Okay, good to go.
Hi guys, welcome to this match. This is going to be exciting. DTM, what do we have here on the Ride My Turtle side?
We have Sleps, Semis, Broadswords, Kitsunes, Fiples, and then a little bitty Stormbringer. Not sure if they're going to get much value out of that. What do we have over on the Minion side?
So Minions bringing the Balgorn and 2 Fleet Tempests, which is a pretty interesting comp. Very heavy armor right there, and that's backed up by Magus, Pontifex for links, Dual Deacon, Hyena Heretic, Vengeance. Very interesting that they've gone for Magus Pontifex there rather than, for example, 2 Ponti. So I'm interested to see how that goes. Ride My Turtle, gambling a little bit on bringing these Kitsunes here to see how ECM goes. Both teams have a huge amount of their players just warped in at 0, so this could be a bit of a brawl as soon as this match starts. Let's watch and see what goes down. But I'm pretty sure those Sleipnirs are going to get Balgorn pretty quickly.
Absolutely. I'm getting excited. I love brawls.
Okay, so far, 5 seconds in. Who's taking the damage? There you go. One Sleipnir has got webbed. There is some jams landing on the Balgorn. So that might be enough to allow the Justice for Hungry to get away. But there's a lot of damage going into that Sleipnir. But that Fleet Tempest, though, of Zardic Gothic is getting chunked through his shield.
Definitely a ton of shield damage, but we're getting into the real tank now because of the double Deacons. We're going to see how this fleet issue handles double Slep damage.
Yeah, there's a lot of damage coming in, and it's just those 2 Deacons. One jam potentially landed on a Deacon there, which would be pretty crucial. If they can get jams right now on those Deacons and break one of those Tempests, it's massive swing towards Ride My Turtle, removing a huge amount of DPS from the field. And right now, that Fleet Tempest is dropping so fast through armor, but he comes back up.
Yeah, we're seeing the bounce back of armor reps as usual, applying on the end of the cycle, allowing them to tank more DPS, but only if they can sort of survive the initial burst, though we are seeing them going to 30% armor. Meanwhile, the Slep going into armor as well right now.
It's going to be
That's a huge armor chunk.
It's going to be a trade. It's going to be a trade. So both of them into hull. The Sleipnir's going to go down first. The Fleet Tempest is hanging on. That's huge. So there you go. One Sleipnir down. They need to finish this Fleet Tempest off. If he stabilizes now under both of those Deacons, that's massive. So Kitsune jams right now landing on a Deacon would be huge. Bigger than that, it'd be large for Ride My Turtle right now.
Yeah, we're seeing the Fleet Tempest right now bounce between about 2% armor up to 4 or 5% armor. They did put a little bit of damage on the Deacons. You have to get control. We talk about it all the time. There's a whole chunk on the Tempest fleet issue, but we talk about all the time how good Logi pilots are worth their salt, and they're bargaining on the Kitsunes being able to do enough jamming to really allow them to get into do DPS. But just look, the Fleet Tempest does not want to go down.
Yeah, look at all the control on that minion side. It is girthy and almost full. That Fleet Tempest has been hanging on for so long that Sleipnir is about to drop into armor before they bring him down. The amount of time he stayed alive was just loads of DPS being applied to the Ride My Turtle side. This Sleipnir, though, is going to go down. The Kitsunes are dropping as well. I think this is starting to swing very hard over to the minions.
I think one of the things that the minions have to look at and they have to deal with the fact is that they have slower ships and they have an area of control where the Balgorn can apply webs, and they need to use that as much as their advantage as possible. Though we are seeing a lot of webs, a lot of control going on to these Deacons. It's a testament to how tanky Deacons are, as the Deacon just doesn't quite want to grow down yet. And without the Sleps to kind of just alpha through the Logi, they're having a little bit of a harder time sort of applying this sort of DPS they want to apply, even with the control.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, both those, well, one Kitsune's still alive right now, and two Sveeples. I feel like they need to, there's so much that needs to happen right now for Ride My Turtle to win here, but it's still possible. They need to take down one of these Deacons at least, and then probably pressure the other one, then kill that Fleet Tempest. Meanwhile, Cabeluta in that Scimitar has to just not die, because once he dies, then that's pretty much game over for them, and he is right now currently doing what I've just told him not to do. He is dying.
Absolutely decimated. We see the Scimitar go down. It's not looking too great for their side right now. Ride My Turtle's going to have to figure out a play here. They're looking at the grid. They're going, what can we do against, another Tempest fleet issue and a Balgorn? Can we even chew through that with two broadswords? Broadswords do a little bit of DPS, but I don't think they do that much DPS.
Yeah, I just don't think they have the ability now to break what's left on the field under these Deacon reps, unless they get very, very lucky with that single Kitsune, but he's not looking good. He's scrammed, he's webbed, and he's eating shit. So I just don't think they're going to kill anything else other than that Fleet Tempest. I think this is it.
Yeah, the minions showed up. They said, "Hey, we really do want to keep this top, or try to get top spots. Let's play."
Yeah, so I mean, with this win, minions basically secured themselves a spot in the Invitational next week, and Ride My Turtle are out of it. So Ride My Turtle, great showing in the Opens. They brought on some interesting comps over the last couple of weeks. Cabeluta, the captain, used a dartboard to determine the comp in 1 week, which is quite fun. I think, unfortunately, this time his dart missed the dartboard and hit the trash can with what's happening right now.
Yeah, we're just seeing right now minions sort of waft around the arena, cleaning things up like my maid used to clean my... Just kidding, I never had a maid. I wish, though. But just sort of wafting around the arena, cleaning up the remnants of Ride My Turtle. Well done, minions.
I mean, to be fair to Ride My Turtle here, that was very close. If they broke that Fleet Tempest of Zardic Gothic earlier, then this could have swung the other way, because they were holding for a while in that second Sleipnir with the Scimitar of Cabeluta. The extra damage coming from Zardic in that Fleet Tempest, if that was removed, I mean, it was like 30, 40 seconds he was alive, which is tens of thousands of DPSs being applied. And I just don't know. If maybe they got some lucky jams, then that could have swung the whole match. But that was much more competitive than the scoreline actually makes it out to be. But there you are, the minions securing a nice victory there and going forward in this tournament. So let's toss it back to the booth.
I like turtles.
D. E. Liverance.
It's only Nighthawk.
Why you have to be mad?
There you are, the minions. They secure their place. Ride my turtle. Unfortunately, out. The turtle was not fast enough in this case. And yeah, so we move to look forward to the next couple of matches. But let's just break down that previous match. Jintan, 10 points into 2 Kitsuns. What do you think of that? Good investment?
Oh, it's a very interesting investment, and it's something that can be potent, especially against those sort of heavy armor comps where you're relying so much on those deacons that have low sensor strength, making it very relatively easy to land those jams. But man, when you're dealing with a team that has the ability to just reach out and kill them, especially later on in the match, it's difficult. You need to be able to execute well with them, and you need to be able to press that advantage. And unfortunately, Ride My Turtle just weren't able to there. I don't think it's a bad decision though. I think it is a good play.
Yeah, and moderator, what's your thoughts on bringing deacons versus, say, a guardian? Although it worked in this case, cruiserology versus frigateology. Mod. I think he's mute.
Yeah, it's just the classic choice between choosing to go more points and having a cruiser. Cruiser downside, it's a little bit easier to hit. The Deacons infamously being very hard to actually apply damage to, and being less points. You kind of have to go with a pair of Deacons when you're going to choose to dump what is 65 points out of the 100 you have available into a pair of 2 Fleet Tempest and a Balgorn there. And we see that kind of also playing out with the Lynx as well. Having a Magus and a Pontifex not being able to bring, battle cruisers or something to that effect for your Lynx setup.
Yeah, and of course they had that hyena as well, and we've been joined in the booth, by the way, by the wrinkliest of brains, Mystical Might. Hyena, very, very useful ship in these circumstances, but why so useful?
Hey. So the hyena is great for damage application and also for range control. So it's usually a pretty fast frigate, depending on how it's fit. It has long-range webs, and it also has a target painter bonus, which can help with, applying damage either in missile format or in terms of turrets. But typically in a tournament setting, it would be, double web fit perhaps, and be used to pin down enemy logistics or to prevent the enemy team from getting on top of those ships that you want to keep safe.
Nice. So I want to get your thoughts, Misty, while you're here, on the bans for today. So we haven't mentioned them yet, but the ban system, the way it works is we ask all the captains to submit a ban, and if they are all unique, then we get 8 unique bans. If not, then we don't. In this case, we have Loki, Nighthawk, Skybreaker, Gila, Abaddon, Orthrus, Barghest. Anything jump out at you there, Misty, or do you think these are pretty standard bans you would expect to see?
I think that it's pretty standard to see a Nighthawk and Loki ban. I think that there's a shared trauma after the previous Alliance Open, where the Nighthawk Loki comp really did kind of like bulldoze through everything that was thrown at it. Abaddon makes sense as well. We've seen some high damage comps come out that basically just all in with no real logistics behind it, and that would be 3 Abaddons, 3 Oracles, or something along those lines, which is also really difficult to deal with. Barghest, I think, is pretty standard. Again, bit of trauma there behind the ban, I'm sure, but a really strong and flexible pick that can be used in both shield and armor comps, though typically more shield focused. So really, it's nice to see the spread of bans, not too many battleships or cruisers. That's what I would have been concerned about mostly. And I think that we're seeing a lot of cruiser or battle cruiser hull bans because it's what are the more flexible elements within a comp. So it's what you'd sprinkle in to really support those big line ships at the top.
And we have about 5 to 10 minutes before our next matchup, which is going to be Prismatic Legion versus Hidden Leaf Village Ninja, whatever. And let's talk flagships. So the flagship deadline has passed. If a team forgot to submit their flagship by now, they are, as we say, shit out of luck. They had to submit it by yesterday downtime. We should have, in theory, a list of 40 flagships, which currently is being closely watched over by CCP Swift and CCP Aurora. But Jintan, I want to get some predictions. What are you thinking? There's a couple of specific rules on flagships this year in terms of what you can and cannot bring. Normally, it's pretty much any battleship, but this year there is some specific ones you cannot designate as your flagship, which is Lashak, Balgorn, Rattlesnake, and Widow. I think the conventional logic says it should be all bar guests, but what do you think, Jintan?
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of interesting options that you can do, especially with the new mutagens that will be applying to DDAs and DDAs. That opens up a whole new realm of things because now you could potentially bring things like the Dominics and have a T1 DPS platform with a lot of utility that can also, rival the DPS of a standard battleship. You also, there's some arguments that maybe a flagship Hyperion or Roke is potentially quite powerful, as is the Tempest or Scorpion Navy issue. You can get some incredible tanks out of a flagship one of those. There's a lot of different options.
If you had to pick one, right, you're in a team that's going to be in the Alliance tournament. You're the captain, Captain Jin, and you have to submit your flagship. What are you going to pick?
I'm a big fan of picking something that makes your enemy have to think more, even if it's not particularly effective. So I would look at probably either the Scorpion or the Praxis as my flagship choice.
Interesting choices there, especially the Praxis. Who knows which way it's facing? I don't, that's for sure. Moderator, what about you? What are you thinking in terms of flagships and picks? What would you pick?
Actually, I mean, I feel kind of like a bit of a jackass going after any picks, not having really been involved in practices this, Alliance Open. I would be kind of expecting to see a lot of Bargus, but I'm really interested to kind of hear it from the perspective of someone who I know is more active in the event, like Mystical Might here.
Nice, dude. Under the bus I go.
Yeah, there you are. I didn't even see that bus coming, but there it is.
Yeah, it came out of nowhere. No, it's. I think Barguest is probably going to be a pretty standard flagship pick for most teams, especially the less adventurous ones. You might see, I guess, some other random ones come out. Like, I'm not even sure. SNIs, are those allowed?
They're allowed.
Yeah, you could maybe see some of those since they're historically pretty tanky. They've done well in tournaments. You'll probably also see some like really weird ones from teams that aren't actually planning to field a proper flagship, simply because of the initial investment required in some cases. So you might just see some memes come out.
Yeah, I wouldn't be, like you were saying, I wouldn't be too surprised if we see some like kind of like meme, maybe like meme Golan or meme Paladin. Maybe not like the strongest choice there, but it wouldn't be too surprising. I mean, like what you were saying, Vargas seems, it's discounted this year. One of the features of being sponsored by the Mortis Legion is all of their ships are discounted by 2 points, so kind of thematically makes sense.
And just to add in really quickly, the idea behind a flagship, at least in my mind when I'm thinking about comps and how to slot ships into them, is you want your flagship to probably be a flexible pick that you can slot into many different comps of different types, whether it's shield or armor, so that you can always bring that flagship when you need to, instead of it being, a Dominix where it might only excel where it's an armor comp, and then all the armor logic gets banned out. It reduces your ability to bring your flagship, so it's like a cross ban of sorts or a blanket ban. So just something else to think about as well.
And one other critical thing to add there for people who might not be particularly familiar with how flagships work is that they're allowed to fit much more than the standard Tech 2 modules, and they also dodge bans. So like Mystical Might was saying is, let's say you have a composition that you really want to bring, or a series of compositions that you can kind of slot a flagship into, and you're bringing that, and you completely dodge a ban, and now the team that you're playing up against is like, oh shit, now we have to face this thing that we explicitly didn't want to fight. So it makes people very uncomfortable in that situation.
Excellent. I mean, I'm all for making people uncomfortable in different situations. And speaking of uncomfortable, Mystical Might, the team of the Alliance that you're in, you could tell us the flagship that they submitted because the deadline has passed. Nothing gained, nothing lost. So why don't you be the first team to publicly reveal their flagship choice. On you go.
See, I could do that if I knew, but I have taken a little step back so that I'm not blurting all of our theory crafting whenever I commentate or I'm on the analyst desk. I do have my own sheet, and I do keep track of some stuff, but I actually don't know what our flagship is.
Okay, I can't see you, but I'm assuming you're winking at me here, and you are indeed picking the flag Macarial. Excellent choice.
It would actually be the
and the
Varga,
Galmil guys will be there in your Macarials. Now, one thing I do want to mention quickly is our beautiful desk here. It was handcrafted by Mr. Bayard J in his backroom studio by himself. He painted it all. He
Thank you very
built it.
much.
He crocheted that little CCP Leggy Bro in the middle for us there. But we are live. We're currently in Jita 4.4. That's where we are. It's a bit of a commute on Saturdays, to be honest, to get to Jita 4.4. But we are live in Jita 4.4. And we have this nice window behind us. So this live view. So if you want to come out there, park your ship behind us and shoot some fireworks, then you too can be on stream. And if you are as cool a Chad as Manic Velocity, you can self-destruct your ship on stream. And this time, Bay will try to almost not miss it by cutting away to something else.
No promises.
That's a promise from Bayard J, he says there. I don't know if you can hear him. Yeah, so let's look at the next match. We've got a couple of minutes to see them in local, but the match isn't ready to go yet. So who have we got coming up? We have Prismatic Legion, the only PL in the Alliance tournament this time, versus some Naruto role players, I believe, I'm told. And where are they in the standings? I think.
So Prismatic Legion only have a single point so far, whereas HLV NASE have 0 points, so unfortunately they cannot possibly make it in this evening. Unless, I guess, I don't think they can make it in at all.
They can get 11 points if they win through everything by getting the 10 points for gold plus 1 point for turning up, I think. I'm not sure if that's how the math works. I need someone smarter than me to confirm that. That would be BRJ, but I think they get the 1 point just for turning up anyway, and then winning would be 11 points.
Yeah, they would also need literally triggered to not win any of their matches as well. They would need to lose to the Ancients in the next match, so it's not completely in their hands, even with a complete victory. So these standings are starting to get a little messy here, but there are lots of chances that there's still routes for almost everyone to the championship. I believe Prismatic Legion will also need to win the whole thing and have literally triggered not win another match in order to get through to next weekend, where, as we've talked about plenty of times, there is an Alliance Tournament frigate up for grabs. This is probably one of the most insane best of ones in terms of the value behind it that we have seen in a long time in EVE tournaments.
Yeah, a couple of minutes for potentially a couple of 100 billion ISK on the line if they keep on winning. But I think we're pretty much ready to cut to the arena for this one. So Prismatic Legion versus Hidden Village Leaf Ninjas. And it is going to be Mystical Might and Moderator casting this one for you.
Hello and welcome to the arena. We're going to be watching Prismatic Legion versus Hidden Leaf. I'm not naming the entire thing. Maud, do you want to get us started with Hidden Leaf's comp?
Yeah, so Hidden Leaf has chosen to bring what appears to be kind of a kitey drone comp with a pair of hyenas in the back line. They've all notably warped in at 50, and we see that another team, Prismatic Legion, has warped in a kind of a staggered range. Why don't you walk us through that comp?
Yeah, absolutely. So Prismatic Legion has brought 2 Lashaks backed by a Scorpion, and then a Magus, 2 Deacons, Confessor, 2 Vengeances, and a Punisher. So very heavy on the tackle wing, perhaps trying to make sure that they can lock down the targets that they're trying to shoot, apply their damage effectively, but also keep the Hidden Leaf team off of their Scorpion. Problem being, since Hidden Leaf brought those drone boats, they don't actually need to get close at all, and it's much, much harder to lock them down since they can just run away and apply from anywhere.
Yeah, I was going to kind of mention before we get started, how do you feel about kind of the situation of having a Scorpion against a almost entire drone team?
It's not what you want to be seeing, and we can see that as the match starts, the Scorpion does begin to burn away a little bit, perhaps trying to put some distance between between him and any potential drones coming out. The sentries come out and immediately going onto the Confessor, taking it out, as it probably tried to burn in. So we're seeing that they're trying to headshot the small tackle at the moment to make sure that they can free themselves up before they apply their damage to the Leshaks that are shooting in EOS at this moment in time.
Yeah, we can see that one of the Vengeances has gotten webbed, presumably by those hyenas. But the Vengeance is getting kind of on top of that drone ball. I don't think the tracking will be too great. One of the Punishers of Death Spec is kind of in the back line. Hasn't gotten tackle on anything yet. I mean, it would appear to be either the Pontifex or one of the hyenas that's applied webs. But as I say that, Alara is getting absolutely demolished by these sentries, burning away, unfortunately, in a straight line, but now catching reps from Deacons.
I have to admit, I'm not quite sure what the Vengeance of Alara is trying to achieve. He wasn't burning towards anything in particular, just straight away from the sentry drones. We see another Punisher go down, I believe, as he's in the middle of the Hidden Leaf team. It looks like one of the Vengeances is chasing a Griffin around the arena, but not making any progress. So perhaps it would have been a better use of their time to dedicate those Vengeances to locking down these Eoses so that the Leshaks could get on top of them and apply.
Yeah, and another Vengeance we see gets taken out by these sentry drones. I mean, the hyenas of Marcus and Douche doing really good work here.
Yeah, and I think this is really going to highlight perhaps the question that Ithaca was asking earlier about hyenas and why they're effective in a tournament setting. When you have sentry drones, what you want to be able to do is apply your full damage. So having these long-range webbing boats that may even have target painters, haven't quite checked yet, enabling these sentry drones to hit these small frigates means that you can clear them off straight away, and you don't have to worry about them later on.
Yeah, kind of as you were alluding to, I mean, what do you use to catch a hyena? I mean, if in this composition, if you're Hidden Leaf, I mean, you have to do it with Vengeances and Confessors. Vengeances are notably very bricky, but even if they were the same speed as a hyena, which they're not, hyenas are very good at kind of webbing those off. Leshaks certainly aren't going to do it, and Leshaks have been applying damage to, I mean, essentially nothing this entire match, being tracking disrupted and being relatively slow. With that said, it would appear that the Ishtar of Murray may be tackled by this Magus of Artsay, but so far it's kind of a masterclass of kiting from this Sentry drone team.
I just had to check the stream to see if these Leshaks were jammed, and I don't think they are, so I'm quite confused. It doesn't look like they have tackle, as they were on top of Murray in the Ishtar, and he's burned away at 2k a second, putting some distance between him and these Leshaks. And it's, you mentioned TDs earlier. I think that's probably one of the reasons why Leshaks have fallen out of favor, is the fact that they are kind of hard countered by these tracking disruptors that teams can bring on any ship that they're piloting in the arena. And because they're hard capped on range, they don't have that fall off. They can either hit you or they can't shoot at all.
Yeah, we see one of these Deacons basically get headshot, and then another Deacon falls, and now these Leshaks have no links. The Magus died about 30 seconds ago. This drone team now surgically going after the Scorpion of Alley McPants, and this armored team of Baltram has just had like its paint scratched and not much else. Just very surgically picking apart, saying, we're going to go after your frigates that try to tackle us and overextend. Then once they do that, we're going to pick apart your links, we're going to pick apart your logi, and now the Scorpion is taking damage. Baltram taking a little bit of damage, but otherwise, this is going to be a clean sweep.
Yep, very much going the way of a clean sweep at this moment in time. Only one Leshak able to shoot. That would be, what is his name? XVX Teacher, being able to shoot Boltron for a bit there, but the other Leshak is triple TD'd from the looks of things, and won't have a chance of applying any damage to anyone.
And like you were talking about earlier, with Leshaks being a little bit less favored because of tracking disruption, one of the infamous things about these kind of drone kitey teams is that you have a prop mod and maybe capacitor injector, but other than that, and besides some tackle mods, you have a lot of free mid slots in these Ishtars and these Eoses, and we see things like target paints being applied to Teacher, and tracking disruption and missile disruption, and a little bit of jams. really kind of a hard counter to be running into if you're Prismatic Legion.
Yeah, it's for anyone that's not too aware of a Lashak or how it works or operates. They have a special gun, super tidal kind of entropic field thingy-majig beam, and what it does is when you shoot a target, the longer you shoot, the more damage it does over time. So it ramps up. But with the TDs and with the ECM coming off of that Griffin, it's going to be nigh on impossible for these Lashaks to do anything more than the base damage that the gun starts with, because they'll either be losing a lock, or just due to the fact that they're slower and they have no way to pin down their targets, they'll be in and out of range constantly. So they'll never be able to apply their full damage potential.
Yeah, and as Mystical was kind of highlighting, you start at what is somewhere between cruiser to battlecruiser damage, and once you get all the way up, you're just absolutely chunking things. You are by far, once those Lashaks can spool up all the way, the heaviest hitting subcapital in the game. Unfortunately, if you're not ever able to apply that damage, and they really weren't, you never get anywhere. And we can see that's the situation that Aspborn Skoldson is now in as he's dropping into the last sliver of his armor here. Really just a technical pick apart of this Prismatic Legion roster by Hidden Leaf.
So we've spoken about, how they've been picked apart and how dire the situation has looked from the very beginning. Do you see any way in which the Prismatic Legion team could have potentially won this match, or at least managed to kill a ship that didn't boundary, looking at the Basilisk here?
They would have had to have been a bit more careful with how they went about tackling things. So Shadow Greaves, unfortunately, in the Confessor, ran across the field and got themselves headshot by sentries rather quickly, and then Alara and Enemy of Entropy, as well as Punisher of Daspec, they got strung apart by these hyenas who were just kind of letting them just kind of get strung along, and then it was over before that really started. If you are Prismatic, how do you apply your tackle wing here?
Yeah, I think what they really should have done is try and pin down these Eoses, or at least some of these Ishtars, and try and take damage off the grid as quickly as possible. They should have been trading their ships for the damage dealers of the Hidden Leaf as much as they could as they were going, but they just didn't do that, and they should have left the Scorpion to deal with the exec. But these are things that you kind of learn. Perhaps it's a case of where you assign your tackle targets in future and how you kind of work into this when you come up against a hard counter. But it's something that they'll probably learn to deal with.
Yeah, and congratulations to Hidden Leaf Village Ninja Assassin Squad for taking this 100-0. And with that, we'll send that back to the studio to break this one down.
We who have seen war will never stop seeing it. In the silence of the night, we will always hear the screams. So this is our story. Wolves amongst strangers.
Did you know that anything can happen in Eltric fleets?
I had a question time, but I couldn't jump. I'm jumping now.
Are you still shaving your balls? Jesus.
Wow, you must have some big balls, you.
Yeah, literally anything.
There you go. So the Secret Small Town Gardeners knocking out PL of this tournament. Prismatic Legion joining the other PL and no longer being part of the tournament whatsoever. That was an interesting matchup. 100-0, clean wipe for the drone comp there. And Misty, you guys were breaking it down a little bit towards the end there. Is there really anything that the Prismatic Legion team could have done to make that match go differently?
Just thinking back to how the match went and where the Hidden Leaf team was positioned around their drones, many of them were still quite close to where those sentries were, which I feel like would have allowed the Leshaks and the tackle frigates to get on top of at least some of them before the rest broke away. And being so close to the sentry drones, even with those hyenas, may have allowed them to prolong the lives of those vengeances. But beyond that, I mean, it's really difficult for the Prismatic Legion team to do anything when they're coming into a team that's basically set up to hard counter the concept of their comp.
Yeah,
And sorry, go on, moderator.
You have to kind of piggyback off of that. If you don't, you kind of have to at least move around the sentry drones. No, don't just go, headlong into them. You have to pick apart kind of really two EOSs, or at least an EOS and an Ishtar, to really kind of put yourself in the game there with your initial tackle.
So DTM, I want to get your thoughts on the Scorpion here. So it's 19 points. Is that a good pick for 19 points? Do you think that's worth it?
I think this is a really interesting idea and concept that we've seen change as jams have changed over time inside of EVE Online. So just, I guess maybe about the broader subject as a whole, I just never, it's one of those things to where you can bring all of the jams you want, but you never know if they're actually going to work out. We saw that earlier against the Deacons. With the Kitsunes against the Deacons, I believe it was. It's just one of those things where, like, I want it to be good, and it can be a good pick. There will be matches where it gets its jams off 70% of the time, 80% of the time, but at the end of the day, if it's jam fit and it's trying to jam things, it's a coin toss in the air. Beyond that, it doesn't really do a ton of DPS, so it's kind of like meh. As personally, that's what I think.
Awesome. And a quick shout out to whoever that is behind us, undocked from G244, just literally spinning in space for our amusement. You're a champion. Well done. Now we have a couple of cool things to talk about. So for those of you who may have just joined us, these teams are competing in the last of the Open Series to get a place in the Invitational that we're going to run next week, and that we have a Alliance Tournament 17 prize ship to give away for the winners of that. Holy cow, isn't that pretty damn cool? And we have some concept art, I believe. Barrett J is telling me we have some concept art, previously unseen, unreleased concept art of the new Mordu's Legion Alliance Tournament frigates. There you are. Beautiful, beautiful. I can't wait to see those in space. I think it's going to be fantastic. Let me know your thoughts in Twitch chat, and make sure you drop a subscribe, you drop a like, you share, and you ring that bell. Mystical Mike, what do you think of a Mordu's Legion prize ship? What do you think they're going to be like?
Well, I can't imagine that they're going to be great fun for whoever's trying to fight them, which is fine. I'm sure they're going to be pretty strong. I'm hoping that they don't get the, chameleon treatment, where they effectively turn into a worse version of themselves. So I think the chameleon is worse than the Gila is in terms of damage. Actually, I think it does slightly more damage, but it's slower, perhaps tanks less as well. And also because of the ECM changes, it can get locked when it jams things. So not amazing there. But I'm hoping for these Mordu's Legion ships, we see something fairly interesting for the Gamma, at least. Perhaps some, torpedoes or something on the Gamma, so that it's not just your standard cookie cutter light missile kiting platform.
And what about you, Jintan? Any thoughts on these potential dope AF ships?
Oh yeah, I think it's just absolutely beautiful. It's set up to do what Alliance tournament ships do best, and that is feed. That is what they exist to do. At the end of the day, it's to create a beautifully purpled out kill mail eventually that we all get to look at and be, wow, that person is rich and also very bad at EVE Online and or got Von Hold.
Yeah, it's one of the most efficient ways to lose a lot of ISK is to go roaming around in one of these ships. But the people that do are pretty baller, in my opinion, especially those that actually fly them around solo and don't go running around with 50 people behind them trying to make sure that their little special ship is safe. So let's throw the standings so far up on the screen if we can. So Odin's Call and Platinum Sensitivity both sitting pretty on 15 points. So they're good, they're safe. Forsaken Empire, Deepwater Hooligans also pretty safe, sitting on 13 points. Then we start to get into the kind of the bubble zone. So this is where things start to get interesting. There's 3 teams on 11. With the minions taking the current tiebreaker in terms of just basically ships killed, points killed in the matches, and literally triggered scraping in there on 10 points at the bottom. But we have a number of teams who are in today that can still jump up and knock some of those teams down. So the Minions, Volta, Test, and Literally Triggered are on the bubble. They could all be knocked out depending on how things play out. Well, not all of them at the same time, but all of them individually could be knocked out. Our next matchup, for example, is Literally Triggered versus the Ancients. So if Literally Triggered win this next match, then they're going to jump up to at least 13 points, putting them fairly safe. But if they lose, well, they're going to get 1 point for turning up today, which puts them on 11, but they are still sitting there just kind of on the bubble, could be knocked out depending on the results of, for example, Hidden Leaf Village Ninja. So all to play for, all very interesting, and lots of teams dependent not just on their own prowess in the arena, but also the prowess of other teams. So there'll be people anxiously watching matches, hoping that people lose, hoping that people win, which I think makes things much, much more interesting. But let's look forward to our next matchup. So we have coming up Literally Triggered versus the Ancients. And we haven't seen the Ancients yet, I don't think. We might have seen... No, we have seen them once before. So both the Ancients sitting on 1 point can still get in. And, of course, Literally Triggered, we just talked about them, can definitely get in with a win here. So it's really up to the Ancients to spoil Literally Triggered's day in a single match. DTM, what are your thoughts here in this next matchup?
I think I'm gonna be handing it over to LT. I think in my opinion they're the better team and they're just gonna win. They have more they have better performance overall in my opinion. I am a fan of underdogs and I do hope Ancients at least make it interesting. Maybe they can even win, but my money's on Literally Triggered.
Yeah, I think it is the safe bet. I think Literally Triggered do have a more comfortable setting right now, and the Ancients aren't quite as experienced. Although, that being said, I flew with a bunch of these guys in Alliance Turn 13 when they were in the Bastards with me. Freya Grey and Iska are two members from that team back then when myself, Nash Cadaver, took our glorious Bastards to 2 wins, 2 losses in Alliance Tournament 13, and of course we got a bunch of prize skins for that, which is pretty cool. At the time they were worth about 6 billion ISK each, and Nash Cadaver listed them all accidentally for 600 million, and they all sold immediately. I'm not bitter about that whatsoever. But I think we can pretty much get ready to go to the arena for this match here, which is going to be with DTM and Jintan. So let's transition over and see how this one goes down.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the arena. I'm here with DTM, and we have what's going to be a really interesting matchup here. It looks like we have Armor Control going up against Shield DPS, with 2 Vargas being brought here by the Ancients. What are you thinking about this this matchup here, DTM?
I see 3 Vargars, and I have the biggest grin on my face right now. I love the Vargar as a platform. It has turrets. It has a little bit of mids for control. It has big tank. It's Minmatar, so it's barely duct taped together. And I know the Foons are good ships, but I cannot wait to see these Vargars in action. You know, I might have to change my bet. I hope the Ancients win after seeing the Vargars.
Yeah, it looks like this is an undermanned comp here from Literally Triggered as well. 9 ships here only, with that Comet being an interesting choice there. You know, they've foregone an extra ship just to bring a faction frigate. They could have split that out into, you know, a Gamma and a Skybreaker or something similar. And that's what we've seen historically with these armor control comps. Do you have any thinking as to why that might be?
They maybe thought that this was a novice faction warfare plex. I don't know. Comet is a definitely solid ship in faction warfare. I have seen them flown in nullsec quite a bit. I haven't seen their performance in the tournament. Have you seen much of their performance in the tournament setting?
We've seen them a couple of times when faction frigates are relatively cheap. We got 30 seconds here before the match starts, but they've never been, you know, a huge meta ship. They've always been just struggling to compete with things like the Zvipple or cheaper options like the pirate faction frigates offer in most tournaments. So we got so many unusual ships here too. The Osprey Navy issue. it's hard to think about what the first punch really is going to be, but it looks like the Typhoon fleet issues are going to need to get in there and start applying some of their utility potentially. I don't know here, guys. It looks like the Jackdaws, though, they're burning around the side. It looks like they're going for the back line, potentially trying to tackle down the Guardian of Parkbank.
Yeah, Parkbank's going to have to start moving to get himself out of the way because those Vargers do have pretty long-range guns and they're going to be able to punch some DPS into it. We just saw the Kitsune go down of the agents. That's a pretty early frag, but it looks like they've managed to get some control onto the Guardian. Meanwhile, the Osprey Navy issue is taking damage as well.
Oh yeah, this is some great piloting here. The Pontifex of Maddox wasn't in position to intercept the turn, and it looks like they've got everyone in the back line. It looks like Key CT, though, now Osprey Navy issue going down there. They're sacrificing so much, they've had to pull out of their logistics range to get on top of them.
Yes, absolutely. We're seeing Jackdaws go down left and right. One of the things to talk about is, like, the Foon does apply really well, especially with rapid lights. They manage to apply really, really well, so they can kill the control off, even though they did a really good job getting into that back line. Suddenly, the Ancients have some hard decisions to make about what they do with the rest of their control, and their Logi pilots and them flying at the edge as another.
Oh my god, it is over! It is over! That Guardian is no longer web DTM. These fuckers have no way of getting on top of him.
There's no way. Oh, no. It's one of the situations where the Vargers are just going to have to hope that they can kill some Foons or something. Even with the reps going onto the burst now, they have no control to slow down that Guardian.
Oh, they are on top of him. They're neuting him. They're trying to smart bomb off these rep drones, but man, this would have to be a heroic effort. That backline dive just ended up so poorly. Literally, Trigger were ready for it. They baited them in. They let them get tackled way out of those logistics frigates' range and just melted them. That was amazing communication and amazing screening as well. I thought they'd failed. They let him get onto Parkbank. You can see he is finally going down now, but wow. Just taking advantage of some over-aggression there from the Ancients.
Absolutely. We've already talked a lot in this tournament about how, your first target call is super duper important, and the Guardian's not a particularly bad call in any way, but if you have to sack all of your control for it, you're looking at some really, really tough game a tough match to win after that.
Parkbank has at least gone down now, so it's not, I guess it's not over. Only 28 points have gone down. It was a relatively cheap backline dive, but still, it's going to take a miracle for them to win this game now without all the stuff to go out and tackle.
Yeah, and one of the questions that we still have to ask ourselves is how are these Vargers going to be tanked? Are they
not very well? There we can see
it. Oh
no! So quickly. Oh no!
The Varga goes down. One of the notes for those of you guys watching at home who don't know this, I don't think you get to fit the Bastion module in tournament play, so you don't get the huge tank, local tank that the sort of Marauders are known for. So they really do have to depend on outside reps. And with both of their scalpels gone, the bursts gone rather. They're gonna
really
do some
interesting
amazing
play
piloting
there from Iska, by the way. Not keeping himself at optimal shield regen, just trying to rep up to full every time, or maybe they're not repping at all. I didn't see any cycles at all from this
I haven't seen any. Are they shield buffer fit? Shield buffer Vargers. Okay, all right. Ancients bringing something definitely interesting. Did I just see reps?
No. Yeah, okay. They are tanked. They're just asleep at the wheel. Don't worry, guys. They're just asleep at the wheel. It's fine. It's fine.
He said I have buffer. I don't. I can just start repping now. The cycle's going off. If the Ancients could I don't know. It's one of those things. I guess the Foon fleets are on reload right now, which is why he's getting to tank back up.
Yeah, some very interesting piloting decisions. It wasn't over, but it seems like they've given up. There you go. You see some over repping there. Are they trying to maybe get the time up the reloads? I don't know. Yeah. Oh, maybe just couldn't rep through clip damage. As Twitch chat's saying, I don't know. It's questionable either way. At this point, the Vargas just aren't doing enough. I guess without boosts and without having everything preheated, it's going to be difficult.
There's more damage
going down.
There's more damage going into the Varga right now. It is starting to rep again. I mean, if they can maybe I don't know if you can survive through the clips of 3. One of the things that might have happened if the Foons misplayed is heating all the way through the clip or trying to. One of the things that is really common with heavy rapid heavies is you end up burning out your stack, but it doesn't look like they're having any issues with that as they just chew through Varga reps.
Yeah, for those wondering in the chat, they can't be RR Vargas. Remote reps are banned on anything that isn't a logistics ship in the Alliance tournament. So these are just plain local tanked. It's been a close match. Well, it was a close match maybe at the start. I thought maybe they had a chance in it, but just really good rundown of the clock here. From literally triggered, keeping those Typhoon fleet issues well away from those Vargas, sacrificing those Malas just to buy as much time as possible to whittle down the AHP. Just great play here. Not getting cocky, not thinking, we killed all their small stuff. Let's dive in and finish the job and maybe feed to a bunch of Varga DPS. It's great stuff.
One of the things worth mentioning is, we questioned the comment at the beginning, but the comment is still alive and staying strong. So maybe we're seeing something that's just big brain sleeper strong that we have not realized yet.
The polarized Federation Navy comment, perhaps. Who knows?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of time here, but I've got to say, there's a really interesting comp here from literally triggered, and this is the second time in a row that we've seen an undermanned comp win. Before this we had 18 losses in a row from undermanned setups, and now in the past 2 times a team has brought them, they've won.
I think if you can depend on pilot skill and you can depend on teamwork, bringing an undermanned comp might end up turning to your advantage. And as some of these players that are new to some of these teams into these settings, whether they have a little bit of experience or no experience, are getting more experienced, maybe these teams are getting more comfortable stepping into undermanned comps because they can depend on pilot skill and teamwork.
Yeah, anyway, that is the match finally complete. Literally triggered, taking it 76 to 100. Yeah, sorry. 34 to 100. We'll head back to the studio and get ready for the next matches.
Just at the start of the feeder round, can you imagine just initiative just losing?
Fucking ram them, motherfucker! We're gonna take down Dark Shines! Dark Shines is gonna get his gun up!
Alright, the support...
Welcome back to the desk. Literally trigger there, taking that match 100 to 34 over the Ancients. The triple Vargar, the dream, it unfortunately did not pan out. Although there was a point near the start of that match when those Vargars rushed in and got on top of that Guardian that I thought it was going to hashtag happen, because that was, I don't know, it was exciting at the start, but then once it just started to tip, it kind of got out of hand for the Ancients pretty quickly. And the reason I think it got out of hand pretty quickly, moderator, I want to talk about screening. Why was screening so important in that match there, and what actually is screening?
So screening is basically using your tackle wing, usually in the form of frigates, to basically hold down an enemy ship. And the idea is screen is you basically form this kind of defensive bubble of basically preventing hostile ships from getting on top of you. For instance, in this match, Vargars, very tanky ship, but they don't project their damage that far out. So if you take, for example, a Vengeance, which is a frigate with a large amount of tank, very good resistance profile, and you just park that Vengeance on top of a Vargar at 0, you have what we call in the tournament scene screened it off. So that Vargar is now stuck and is either forced to reload to something like Barrage, which will project further out, but doesn't do nearly as much damage as it wants to, while those Typhoon fleets are perfectly content to just pelt you with their rapid heavy missiles at range.
Awesome. And Misty, it looked like the screening in that match was pretty good from Literally Triggered. Is that pretty much what saved their Guardian towards the start of that match, or do you think that like if they weren't screening so well, that those Vargas could have broke that Guardian?
I'm going to have to disagree with saying that Literally Triggered had a good defensive screen going, considering the entirety of the Ancient support wing managed to get on top of their Guardian in quick order, including an Osprey, which for some reason was also at 0. But I think that it kind of played into their hands because it allowed them to just blitz through the entire Ancient support team. I was posting a GIF in the production chat saying it was probably the worst trade I'd seen in a while. And I wasn't actually sure the Guardian was going to die. So while they weren't great at screening, they definitely used their lack of screen to their advantage when they actually began moving their ships around.
Awesome. And the other thing I want to bring up, Jin, there was a bit of talk there towards the end of that match about the undermannedness, and you pointed out that we had 18 in a row undermanned matches lost, and suddenly they're winning. First of all, that's kind of interesting, and second of all, do you think there's like a tipping point where having more points to plow into less ships is more valuable than having more people, or do you think that it really, really is situational?
I think it's something where we've reached the point now where even people who are only vaguely familiar with theory crafting for the Alliance tournament understand that it's a bad decision. We rail against it so often as commentators that people basically only bring it when they're trying to style on their opponents. That's kind of my perspective at this point.
So
and because of that, it's getting wins because people are bringing on it when they think they can style, and it turns out they hella can.
So do you think there's any comp, any undermanned comp that is better than an equivalent 10-man comp, like where the comp only works undermanned for whatever reason?
There's always been some iterations of Tinker that only work well when you're undermanned, but honestly, like having as many slots as possible on your team is so important when it comes to the Alliance tournament because you're trying to just make sure you have as many interactions as possible with your opponents. One less ship means you get to present a screen that has one more hole in it. You can't double team one ship and take it down quickly. It constrains your options quite significantly.
Yeah, the other thing we talk about a lot is the concentration of E-War towards the end of a match. At the start, when you have 10 targets to spread E-War across, it can be spread quite thinly. But as you lose ships, or as your opponent loses ships, then the number of targets you have to put that E-War onto dwindles, and each individual ship therefore becomes slightly more effective against the remaining ships in the other team. And there's also that one last thing to be said about bringing that 10th man, even if they are literally just acting as an extra large shield extender for your other ships by getting in there and soaking up damage while your other ships get away. That is prolonging the life of maybe perhaps more important ships in your comp. Your logistics cruiser being a good example. So we've done the initial 4 matches here today, which means that now, if we bring up the brackets, we're into the semi-finals. So this is where stuff starts to get interesting. The next match is directly for an invite. So Localist Primary versus the Minions. So if I'm reading this correctly, whoever wins this one basically guarantees themselves an invite into the invitational next week and a chance to win the special edition frigate, which will be given out as a part of a prize for Alliance Tournament 17. So literally all to play for, literally hundreds of billions potentially to play for here. And local, Jintan's telling me all sorts of secret stuff in the production channel. Jintan, why don't you tell the people?
I think, from my understanding of the rule, actually no, we do have the third place match as well, which complicates things. So Local is primary. If whoever wins this match goes ahead in the standings, and they force the other person to need to win the third place match in order to have a shot at beating them in the standings and keeping their slot in the standings. The Minions are an 11-point team, and they can potentially be knocked out by Local is primary to get their spot next week. So this is effectively for an invite to next week.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a couple of people in teams that aren't playing today. Test Alliance, please ignore. We from Volta, for example, perhaps nervously watching these standings shuffle around as they drop lower and lower in towards the elimination zone. There's 3 teams sitting right now on 11 points, and that is what separates them from not being invited at all. So if anyone goes above 11, then the number of tie breaks just drops and drops and drops, and eventually that 11 cannot go up any higher. So Test Alliance Volta not playing today, they cannot get more points than this. So they really need to hope that a certain number of wins goes a certain number of ways in order to guarantee that they get through next week for the chance to win that ship. Mystical Mind, what do you make of this this format and this ship being given out? I think that's pretty cool. Do you think it's going to add some more spice to it?
Yeah, I was thinking as the Open Series was going along that it would be great to be able to reward people for turning up on the day, for showing off some of their comps, but also, something else besides the practice. And I think the practice in itself is very valuable for a lot of these teams who perhaps aren't as experienced in an AT or a tournament setting at all. It gives them a chance to really understand the warp rules, which we know some teams struggled with before. They get to, count their ships, make sure they're not bringing too many, which we know some other teams also deal with, Volta. But being able to give out a ship also does add a certain level of spice to it, right? Teams now want to win. They have a monetary reward that comes along with this win, and they're competing for it, just like they would in the actual AT.
And moderator, do you think this is going to influence what teams bring? Because a lot of the times in the opens, we see teams bringing maybe like meme comps or just kind of like stuff that they consider lower tier comps. They definitely don't want to bring something that they think is a potential Alliance Tournament winning comp. But with an Alliance Tournament frigate on the line, do you think we're going to see a bit more depth into that pool?
Yeah, I mean, the teams that are fighting for their spot today, I think, are going to realize that there are teams that typically you would not expect to see in kind of, like a top 4. To be fair, we don't know what the price structure will be for this, main tournament. I think if you're a team that traditionally you expect to get maybe top 16, maybe top 8, I think you go all in and you say, okay, I want to get, at least into the qualifiers for next week and get that prize ship. This might be my best chance at getting a tournament ship. I mean, with that said, though, literally Triggered did bring a Navy Comet and an underpointed setup. So trolling a little bit, but it did work out for them. Speaking of things that work out, interesting to see this match as we see both teams on field.
Yeah, this should definitely be interesting as I've just seen them landing. I think we can just cut straight to the arena for this one. Let me just check who is casting this one. It is myself, Ithaca Hawk, and Mystical Might. So let's flip to the arena for Localist Primary versus the Minions and Misty. Wow, what do we see here?
Well, we have 3 Vargas, a Claymore, a Jackdaw, 2 Gamas, and 2 Bursts for the Localist primary team. And for the Minions?
For the Minions, we're seeing a Vindicator, 2 Fleet Tempest, Magus Pontifex, Deacon, Heretic, Vengeance, Purifier. So very similar to what they brought last time, except with this Vindicator. And they have warped in right at 0 with a bunch of their stuff, and the Localist Primary warped in a bunch of their stuff at 0 as well. So this could be a race to who can lock quicker and who can hit F1 the fastest. As both, even their support wings are as close warp-ins as they possibly could be. They're only like 30 kilometers away from each other.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see how these teams fare against each other. They've both warped in a lot of damage at 0. I think that the Vargas may actually come out slightly ahead, as they also have the Claymore at 0 as well, which presents itself as both another target but also another damage dealer in the center there. So it's going to be tricky to see how they play, and neither side has a way of really mitigating damage, since TDs at this range won't work, and neither of them have jams to speak of.
Yeah, worth mentioning, Locals Primary bringing 9 people, so they are flying one of the infamous undermanned comps. The last 2 have won. Can they make it 3 in a row with undermanned comps as the match is underway? And immediately, girthy attack bars on both sides, as Vargar of Arya is one target, and the Fleet Tempest of Zardes is the second. This is a DPS race, Misty.
They are really chunking through that Tempest Fleet issue. For a moment, I thought it was a Varga with how fast it dropped into armor. It's now half armor, with the Vargas also kind of holding up in low shields as well. Both sides putting out a lot of damage. And I think the Varga might actually die first.
I don't know. They're both going to hit hull at the same time, so I think the Fleet Tempest does have more hull than a Vargar, so it should have that little bit extra buffer. But as I say that, the Vargar is actually looks like it might win this trade, but they're going to go down almost at the same time. So the DPS race continues, neck and neck. Fleet Typhoon goes down first. Vargar follows it pretty much straight after that. And yeah, 24 points, 23 points. Now it's on to Vargar Fleet Tempest yet again.
Yeah, one thing to note is that since they've lost the Varga, that's a lot of damage, same with the Tempest Fleet issue, but we haven't pointed out that they have a Purifier on the minions side with those torpedo launchers doing basically battleship damage to these Vargas as well. So still an even ability to trade damage here, but it looks like it's favoring the Vargas at the moment, with this Tempest Fleet issue dropping even further.
Yeah, that's a very good point on that Purifier there, Misty. And I'm actually kind of surprised to see that those 2 Garmers haven't just gone off after it and almost soloed it down themselves, because I mean, those Deacons are going to be busy keeping the Fleet Tempest up. There's no way they're going to keep a Purifier alive as well. A Burst going down there on the Locals Primary side. Is this starting to swing a little bit towards the minions in terms of control here if they keep this Fleet Tempest alive a little bit longer?
I think if they lose this Tempest Fleet issue, but they trade it for the Varga, if they're able to, then it will put them in a decent spot, as they'll only have to tank the Vindicator against 1 Varga and 1 Claymore, basically. They're not really experiencing too much pressure from these Garmers for some reason. I thought that they'd be trying to split reps. It looks like they might be trying to clear some rep bots instead at this point. But I don't know how effective that is when they could be forcing the Deacon to rep his friend, or choose between the Vindicator that's currently taking damage here.
Yeah, I do think that getting that Purifier down is probably super important for them, because it just removes a huge amount of DPS on that Vargar, and Desti Noah is struggling right now, dropping into hull, and if he goes down, that's basically 2/3 of their DPS gone from the field. Meanwhile, the minions still have a Vindicator, known for, of course, putting out a huge amount of DPS, and that Purifier.
Yeah, and I think the really important thing to note is that the minion side have their logistics wings still. So they're going up against a Varga, a Claymore, a Jackdaw, and a Garma, but they have both of their Deacons, whereas the Localist Primary side doesn't have any remote reps at all. So now the Varga has to rely on its own tank, and when those charges run out, it will eventually drop into armor and then hull and die. And the other thing I want to point out is that with one of those Garmas dying, they don't have as much catch as they did before. So even if this Vindicator dies, if they're able to keep this Purifier up, which it doesn't look like they'll be able to because it went to 0 on a bunch of... Okay.
That should have happened so long ago. That Purifier went down so quickly, and that is maybe 600-700 DPS removed from the field right there. That was just sitting, just vomiting that all over a couple of Vargars for, I mean, we're 4 minutes into the match almost. That's a huge amount of DPS.
I think that's slightly... that's a bit of a throw from the minion side. The Purifier ended up at 0 on everything, so it basically just approached the Varga, which put it in prime range to quickly be taken care of, and they don't have to worry about that damage pressure coming out anymore. You can see the Vindicator is tanking at this point in time. Maybe that's because one of the damage ships has burned its guns, or perhaps the reactive hardener that it probably has, being an armor ship, has spooled towards the... oh, never mind. The damage that was being done. If that Purifier was still alive, I think they would have had a decent chance, at least, of doing something here.
Yeah, the Vargar, Claymore, Garmer right now going up against the Vindicator. I mean, the Vindicator is slowly dropping. He isn't a hull. He is bleeding through hull as the Deacons are muted, probably by the Vargar or the Claymore sitting directly on top of them. But it might be too little too late. Even if they kill this Vindicator, I say that though, actually, the Heretic and the Vengeance, can they kill the Vargar and the Claymore?
I think what the Vindicator needs to do, and is kind of doing, is to pull away from the Varga and sit on the opposite side of the Claymore from where that Varga is, and just see if it can tank long enough to perhaps work its way through those Claymore charges. And if not, then it just needs to burn away and try and put as much distance as it can between itself and the remnants of the Locust Primary team. I think the minions are ahead in points, so if it can just survive, as long as possible, and they don't lose any other ships, then they still stand a chance of winning this match. But they'd have to, I believe, stay alive for another 5 minutes.
Yeah, thing is, that Heretic just went down, which means really, if that Vindicator dies, the only DPS ship remaining for the minions is the Vengeance. And yeah, the minions are ahead on points right now, 58. But if the Vindicator goes down, they definitely will not be ahead on points, and they'll have to kill quite a lot in order to to win this match. But this Vindicator needs to live. He needs to stay alive. These Deacons, one of them is both of them are no longer neutered, so they should be able to start hopefully capping up and getting those reps onto Trinity Weaver there in that Vindicator. He is just clinging to life right now. Vargar and Damascus Kadesh are in that Claymore, and he just need to overheat everything. But based on the way that armor is generating back up now in that Vindicator, I think that moment might have passed.
What they need to do on the minion side is make sure that both of their command destroyers are over with where their Deacons are. They need to basically practice screening, which is what we've spoken about in the previous kind of death segment, is make sure that Varga and that Claymore can't get on top of their Vindicator, and also try and separate them. So I imagine the Claymore and Varga are going to try and burn into that Vindicator to apply damage, and what they'll want to do is make sure that only one of those damaged ships get through, and then it might be possible for the Vindicator to work its way through while being repped by that Deacon.
Yeah, so they could be MJD done, as we've been told by Barrett J in the background right now. Vindicator, Deacon, Vengeance, all sitting just around 100 kilometers from the center of the arena. So, I mean, this could go any way still. It's just so tight right now. Minions have it on points. They are ahead by 7 points. So the Varga and the Claymore, if they catch and kill 2 of the ships other than the Vindicator, then they're ahead on points. And right now, that Magus, only Hull left. He's going to go down. So the Magus is down, the Magus is down. Right now, the minions are ahead by 1 single point. So if any ship on their side dies, then they need to kill a Varga or a Claymore in order to win. And all they've got to do that is, all they've got to do that is a Vindicator and a Vengeance.
And 2 Deacons. We can't discount the Deacons because that's basically just extra tank for whatever these Vargas and Claymores decide to shoot.
True. But those ships were killing the Vindicator earlier, and he had to run away. So can that Vindicator get in about them and still kill them?
That is true. And I think it kind of calls back to the reactive armor hardener that I was mentioning before. The fact that the Vindicator's taken so much damage and it's had its reactive spooled towards the damage that they were doing before probably means when they come around to shoot it again this time, it might take less damage less quickly, allowing it to effectively tank a little bit longer. What I was going to say really quickly is that I think this Vindicator and his team should really just be sitting on the beacons that we see dotted around the edge of the arena. The Claymore and the Varga are lining up for an MJD right now, aimed towards the Vindicator. They haven't actually started off yet. I think they're just waiting to both be fully ready. There they go.
There they go. Oh, this could be it. If they land and get a scram or something on that Vindicator, they've got 2 minutes to kill it. Or, I mean, Thomas said they catch anything, so it depends where these ships land. I see the Vengeance burning in. There you go. The Varga landed. They're pretty close. They could probably snag something. Yeah, they got Newts on that Pontifex now.
Yeah,
if they could slow him down.
Yeah, it's going to be a case of trying to see if they can clear that Pontifex. I think that's their best bet for winning this match. If that Pontifex is able to pull range, I don't know if it was in fall off Newts, then they're probably going to have a really hard time trying to claw this back in the last minute. And there is only a minute and a half left, so there's not really too much time that the minions have to stay alive. I was going to say if they were sitting on the beacons around the edge of the arena, the Pontifex, the Deacons, the Vengeance would have all been basically immune to the Varga and the Claymore. They would never have been able to get on top of them. So a bit of a misplay from the minions here to be sitting in the middle of nowhere, but it looks like they're able to pull away without too much damage done.
Yeah, the Pontifex not moving very fast, and it's drawing the 2 Deacons in towards them as the Varga and the Claymore both trundle in. Also not moving very fast. Suspicious, perhaps maybe they've burned prop mobs out during the chase, as both of them basically only moving a couple hundred meters per second maximum. 46 seconds. If someone screws up somewhere, a Varga and a Claymore can kill a Pontifex in like 20 seconds.
Yep, I was going to say it's highly likely. I'm just trying to think about it. that the Varga and the Claymore may not actually have prop mods, as they walked in at 0 expecting just to duke it out. It might be that they just, didn't fit any prop mods and instead decided to fit some extra tank to allow them to survive in the face-to-face brawl that they were going to go up against. They couldn't have known that they were going to be brawling at that time though, so it's pretty risky if they didn't fit prop mods. So I'm not quite sure why they're not really burning around and moving quickly. But I can see some tracking computers on that Varga, so I think they're just fit for max range, max tank.
Wow. So there you go. As time expires, the minions win that one by a single point, 58-57 over local is primary, in possibly one of the most exciting matches of the day. And unfortunately, it does end the undermanned team streak of 2 is now over. But wow, there's a lot to unpack on this one. So let us throw it back to the arena and we'll break it down there. Throw it back to the desk and we'll break it down there.
Pew, 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 pew. Pew, pew, pew.
So the plan is that we execute a star formation with perfect 90-degree angles. You need to heat 2 cycles, not 3, 2. Spipple's web, but the Spipple's web. And we need do we need missiles or Spipples? And we need thermal drone.
HiSec Buyback offers 90% JITA anywhere in HiSec. Simply go to hisec.evebuyback.com, appraise your items, create a contract, and get paid quickly.
Welcome back. Wow, what an exciting match there, as we saw Triple Vargar set up going up against Vindicated Fleet Tempest, and it went down to a single point as the minions advance further in today's Open Invitational Series. Moderator, do you want to just start unpacking some of that there?
Man, okay, so I was, just adding up the points furiously, and we have a 100-point 9-man comp going up against a 98-point 100-man comp, and those points actually ended up being, the game of inches. This was a 1 by, a 1-point margin, and as both the commentators were saying, that bomber didn't die until 3 minutes 10 seconds into the match, and you had rocket Garmers and a rocket Jackdaw, and that Purifier was on you at 0. I can't help but feel like that's basically where the match was lost right then and there. Not having that 700 damage, off the field, as it's going to be dumping rage missiles into you at 0.
Yeah, and Jin, do you have anything to add to this on that what we just saw there?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's easy to blame teams for making mistakes like that, but when you are in the middle of a match like that and you're trying to micromanage absolutely everything, it can be so easy to miss, a ship where they shouldn't be on your overview just because you're not expecting it. People underestimate how much information you have to process in a short period of time when it comes to these AT matches, because we're not piloting ships when we're talking about it as commentators, and you aren't as viewers either.
Yeah, and DTM, we saw there that Vindicator peeling off and managing to save himself with just a tiny sliver of hull left. That seemed like that was a pretty important maneuver. Like, what's kind of the thought process for teams when they realize what's going on? Like, when do you say, "Hey, pull away," like try and survive versus overheat and stay?
I think this might have less to do with the FC making a call and more to do with the person making a call. I'm pretty sure that most people who have played EVE Online and done any form of roaming have had the moment where they're like, all right, things are getting a little hairy. I need to get out of Dodge. And then you just try and burn, and you heat. If you have a prop, you heat it. If you have a jump drive, you try and cycle it. You do whatever you need to do to try and get away to mitigate as much damage as possible. And I'm sure that's what was going through that Vendy's pilot's head. And he did a good job. He got away, which means his team ends up getting the win.
Awesome. And we're just doing the quick math on the points for teams to get into the top 8 from this AT17 Open Series to see who's got all the locked spots, because we think that we might have reached the stage where the 8 teams invited next week are confirmed, and we will get that to you as soon as we've got it confirmed. We're just double checking our maths here to make sure that we are exactly correct. But let's look forward to our next semi-final match today. We have Hidden Leaf Village Ninja Esports Squad going up against Literally Triggered in order to see who goes up against the minions in the final and who drops into the bronze match against Local is Primary. Moderator, what do you think about this matchup here? Literally Triggered versus Hidden Leaf Village Ninja.
Yeah, so Hidden Leaf Village Ninja Assassin Squad Esports Team, I believe that's their full name, according to Twitch.television, can't actually make it, having not scored any points from these previous weeks. And Literally Triggered, it would appear, they've locked in their roster, and their spot into the finals next week. Both teams having shown, pretty solid performances thus far. But I have to kind of give the edge to Baltram's roster a bit. I think they've been pretty solid and shown relatively good execution throughout.
Excellent. And yeah, you can see on the screen now the current open standings. So the 8 teams that will be invited to the Event Alliance Tournament Special Invitational Open. I don't know if it has a proper name yet. Will be Odin's Call, Platinum Sensitivity, Literally Triggered, Forsaken Empire, Deepwater Hooligans, The Minions, We Form Volta, and Test Alliance. Please ignore. All 8 of those teams securing their spots next week, and all 8 of those teams going to be able to compete for a chance to win a special edition frigate from the prize pool from Alliance Tournament 17, one of the Mordus Legion ships. It's going to be pretty cool. I believe it's a frigate that is up for grabs here. All of those teams are in the Alliance Tournament as well, except Test Alliance, please ignore, who went out in the feeder rounds, if I'm not mistaken. They fed hard, but enjoyed their stay so much, they decided to come back and play in the Opens anyway, and have now got themselves in the position to actually win an Alliance Tournament prize ship anyway, despite being eliminated during the feeders. And I think that's pretty dope. Jin, what are your thoughts there? You think that's pretty cool?
I think that is amazing. It's been great fun to see these practices every weekend for the past couple of months, get everyone used to seeing what a Eve tournament play looks like again. It has been a long time. We've had relatively sparse tournaments up until this year, and CCP Aurora really kickstarting the tournament program again.
Yeah, and worth mentioning, Test Alliance last week, they stormed through the brackets using an undemand triple golem setup, much to everyone's surprise. And Misty, I want to talk briefly about Marauders in the Alliance tournament. So Marauders are quite heavy on points, but you can't use the Bastion module on them in the tournament anymore. Is a Marauder still a good sort of core ship to base your comp around, or is it just maybe too expensive that Bastion mod?
I think you might be asking the wrong person, because I've been a massive fan of some really silly comps like, Ardi Vargas and stuff. My team hate me for it, but, I've definitely thrown these ideas around because I think they're kind of cool and they could work in a situational environment. And I think that's kind of what applies to Marauders in general, is that they're very situational. If you have the right bands and you know how the Marauder kind of setup interacts with different sorts of teams or comps that you can go up against, then I think they're actually pretty strong. But it's very dependent on your team knowing how to play with each other and also the fits that you bring. So we saw with the Golem setups, I think that they basically tinker tanked a little bit with energy transfers, just sat on top of each other and had max range. And that allowed the Golems to apply to everything in the arena, whereas a Varga or a Paladin or a Kronos wouldn't have that, so perhaps less valuable in the tournament setting.
So speaking of valuable in a tournament setting, Moderator, during Alliance Tournament 16, we saw a lot of Leshaks. even though they were so expensive points wise. They're 25 points. They're also 25 points here in Alliance Tournament 17. What is that still good value at 25 points? It's incredibly expensive. I mean, 2 Leshaks, for example, would be 50 points, half of your 100 points. What do you think on that?
Yeah, so I mean, part of the reason that Leshaks were as prevalent as they were in that event is that the Leshaks were universally flagship picks by the teams that had more or less figured out the meta, and as a result, Leshak bans were far less prevalent, and they weren't as effective, right? If your flagship can just bypass that ban anyway. This event, it seems like teams, as Mystical Might was alluding to, have kind of figured out how to work around the Leshak. I don't recall the exact point structure, so that may have changed a little bit. This year, Leshaks are no longer eligible to be a flagship because of just how meta-defining they were in the last event.
Cool. I think we're ready to pretty much go to the arena, and I just looked over to the arena to see one of the ships of one of the teams has warped in at an illegal range, choosing to warp in at 100 kilometers from the center of the arena, where in the Alliance tournament you must warp within 0 to 50. So our referee, General Stargazer, is just about to yeet him down to 0 as punishment for his illegal warping maneuver. But let's hand over to the arena and your commentators for this one, as Hidden Ass go up against Literally Triggered with Moderator and DTM.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the arena. On the Hidden Leaf Village Ninja Assassin led by Hokage Baltram himself, we have Leshak Comp with Oneros, Omens, Magus, and some Navy Slicers. Tell me what we have over on the LT side, Mod.
Yeah, so literally Trigger has chosen those Maulers that have been moved to 0, a pair of Typhoon Fleet Issues, Vengeances, Oneros, and a couple Confessors and an Eos to round out the links in that command ship. We were talking a little bit about that Mauler having been moved to 0 for an illegal warp-in, apparently in local, saying that they wanted to come in at 20, but a Mauler being in at 0 is not the worst thing that can happen to your team here.
No, it certainly is a tanky ship, but we're seeing the start as these slicers sort of burn in and burn around, looking to get a bit of tackle. Meanwhile, the Leshak's also burning in. That Mauler needs to get a move on. The Vengeance coming up to screen for it a little bit. That Slicer turning just away. I don't see a ton of DPS on anything on grid, but we are seeing the Vengeances start to burn directly into the Hidden Leaf Comp.
Yeah, we see that Mari had got an initial tackle on the Shack and then maybe overshot a bit. Baltram now being held down by Mari's Vengeance, but the Typhoon Fleet issue of J.A. Aloyus is closing to that Leshak of Baltram, just choosing to brawl it out anyway at 0 with the Leshak. That is a very bold move, given that is a rapid heavy Fleet Typhoon.
The Fleet Typhoon's taking a little bit of damage. Worth mentioning that the Oneros is spacing properly with all of the rep bots on it, which means that blue side is not using any anything to get those rep bots off of them yet. They need to get in there with a smart bomber or something. Also, with no control, there's no way they're going to kill it. So they kind of have to figure out what they're going to call primary and how they're going to move forward with this.
Yeah, those rep drones that we see clouding Levy and Nivea, there is nothing on the side of Literally Trigger that can apply damage. Those rep bots probably need to shift over to the Leshak of Baltram, and we see them just now make that call. Really well designed, good decision. J.A. Loya is now deciding that maybe he should be 20 kilometers away from the Leshak and not at 0. So we're seeing that the Fleet Typhoon of JA now being grappled for that kind of mistake and being punished. Nothing really breaking so far except for Mari Tachibana now being swapped over, the Vengeance being held down by Baltram and not appearing to track just yet.
Not appearing to track. He is at 0 on Baltrum, orbiting him really tight, and he does have some reps on him. Meanwhile, Basilisk in the Omen taking a little bit of damage. He is going to get... it looks like they're actually killing some medium rep bots off of him as they do more damage. The Slicers are also really fast. Their ability to kind of get in and out of the... LT's comp and sort of play amongst them is really going to come in handy here as we're coming down to the wire. They need to kill something off the grid.
Yeah, it will appear that the Eros is now the primary. The Eos being held down by those Leshaks and Navy Slicer. And that Eos is getting absolutely chunked as those spools are ramping up. Meanwhile, the Omen of Basilisk is taking damage, but that Oneros is
there's
not
reps!
going to be... Yeah, that Oneros is not going to be sufficient to hold up that Eos as reps are spooling. We see now a few more rep drones get applied, but I don't think it's going to hold as Basilisk drops. Murray Rotensk now in down, very low in armor. Trying to kill drones, and I think is going to die himself here.
So they do end up trading the Eos for a Slicer and an Omen. This is one of the situations that they're going to put themselves in where they're getting ahead in points. So now they're going to start looking at the grid. What's the next primary? Are we going to go for points? Or are we going to just try and beat the whole comp outright? Meanwhile, Mr. Bag himself over in the Omen Navy issue taking a ton of damage. As we're seeing the rep bots head over to him to start getting some reps on him.
Yeah, so that Omen Navy issue is being held down by Pishtaki in the Vengeance. And critically, now that the Eos is down, you just have the Magus for Link, so going to be significantly slower and less tanky. Douchebag, Omen Navy issue is not known for their tank. He is going to fall down here. Jaffe in his Typhoon Fleet issue is now the primary for those Leshaks that are within 20 kilometers. That Typhoon being held down by...
Yeah, that looks like the Foon's getting a lot of damage onto it because there's a Maul Intervengeance on the Oneros. The Jutsu Repper himself going down. They're getting into a dangerous situation. Meanwhile, though, we are starting to see the spooling onto a fleet issue, and that's a lot of points to lose. They need to do as much repping of that Foon as they possibly can to keep him up and alive so that they can actually win this match.
Yeah, we see that the heavy maintenance bots from J.A. Lois have moved on to Jaffe as Nith Hyken in his Slicer drops. Jaffe catching reps, just barely. We can see that the Leshaks are closing with their smart bombs, and once those smart bombs do land, those rep drones will pop. But I don't even know if the Typhoon's going to last that long.
He's just trying to rep himself up right now. I don't know if he has an Enseal. It looked like he got a double rep. Tons of damage going into his hull. You're seeing the bleed just a little bit. That's a lot of DPS to take off of grid, and that's a lot of points for... They take him down. He absolutely giving them maybe back the point advantage, but more importantly, eliminating some of that rapid heavy DPS off of the grid, allowing them to still have some of their control ships, have to worry a little bit less about DPS. They still need to worry about getting caught and killed by maulers. They still need to worry about the other things that are on grid, but now they get to go to work on the other Foon, and now all of their small control gets to do their job without having to worry about 2 rapid heavies.
Yeah, and it's going to be 0 rapid heavies in a second. Baltrum is comfortably repping up right now, and J.A. Lois is down into hull. No longer has any heavy rep drones to be assigned to him. Is getting a little bit with those Ansil reppers, but we can see J.A. Lois is bleeding hull. He's going to drop in the next couple server ticks. Baltrum is now getting swarmed by these Confessors and Vengeances who have close to 0, realizing that Baltrum has to drop for the point to swing back in the favor of literally triggered.
Baltrum sitting here going, I don't need the Oneros to rep me. I don't need the help. I can handle this on my own. The Leshak that won't stop. He just won't quit. You're watching the reps as he bounces down into low armor and bounces back up. Meanwhile, starting to switch to some of the smaller stuff on grid. The Fessers and the Maulers kind of the next big targets that they have to worry about. The control from Hidden Leaf Village has to watch themselves. They don't want to get caught by anything right now. But most importantly, they want to keep their point lead. It looks like Baltrum might be in trouble, though, going down into hull.
Yeah, Baltram's dropping down into Hull, and Maddox over was the primary here, but unfortunately the tracking just isn't happening. And those Confessors of Vengeance, the Maulers, that's going to be just shy of 2,000 damage with drones here. And I mean, unless a couple of these Confessors drop, Baltram just doesn't have any more rep drones to sustain him. He's going to have to be relying on his local tank, and that local tank, while potent, isn't going to be enough to hold up against 2 Confessors, 2 Vengeance, and 2 Maulers.
Absolutely loving how long he's lasting in Hull, though, right now. He just has more to give. The longer he stays on grid, the more spooling he gets to do, the more damage he gets to do. He's in such low. There's an armor rep, but in another tick or two, they actually get the Confessor down before the Leshak goes down.
Okay, that is huge. The Confessor dropping at the same time means that the Magus now dropping. We're going to have to see what the point situation is like, because with 1 minute and 50 seconds, Marcus Cataline in his Navy Slicer is held down and tackled. Yeah, he wasn't going to be able to pull range.
The Omen needs to get away from the pack right now. We know that these Leshaks are tanky. They have 1 minute 36 on time. All the Omen has to do is live. Wait, no, they're actually behind in points. So Hidden Leaf Village has to pick up a frag. They might kill the Mauler.
Yeah, no, we're going to be tied on points if that Mauler drops. So the CEO is being held down by that Leshak, grappled at 0. So the Leshak of Russian name has exactly 1 minute 10 seconds to kill that Mauler, who is catching reps right now. It appeared that Parkbank has been doing absolute work. Looking at this Leshak, I'm not sure if his guns aren't overheated. He's applying newts. He just needs to make sure that he's able to track, and one Leshak fully spooled onto a Mauler will break it in time, but unfortunately, Dragon Wrath and his Navy Omen has been tackled, and that pack of Vengeance's Confessor and Mauler are going to break him in the next 10 seconds here. So even if that Mauler drops, it won't be enough, and Parkbank MVP has been changed to in the UI here. Parkbank, absolutely the hero of this roster.
Yeah, absolutely doing his job. We talk about it constantly. Good Logi pilots are worth their weight in gold. His ability to navigate, not get caught, and absolutely stay just at the edges. We're seeing the Mauler come back up now because he doesn't have the Omen to do it. It was an amazing try on both sides. We saw the awesome tank out of the Leshaks. We saw the amazing rep piloting. Well done, everybody.
Yeah, that's a very exciting match. Commentators will have to break that one down, along with the analyst team, as we head back to the desk right after some commercials.
I like turtles.
Deliverance.
It's only Nighthawk. Why you have to be mad?
Welcome back to the booth, and wow, that was quite something. That was almost our first match going into reverse tie-dye here in the Alliance Tournament Open Series, at least today. I don't know if we've had any in the previous weeks, but if that Mauler had gone down and if that Omen hadn't died, we would have entered reverse tie-dye, and who the hell knows what happens in reverse tie-dye in a match like this. That would have been extremely exciting. But as it stands, the Minions and Literally Triggered are the two teams that make it all the way to the finals today to win some cool skins and, of course, a sense of pride and accomplishment. Meanwhile, Local is primary, and Hidden Leaf Village, I forget the rest, are making their way into the bronze match to find out who goes third, which is also for pride and accomplishment, which, as we know, is very, 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 very important. Jin Tan, what did you make of that match? There was so much going on there. I mean, shout out to Park Bank and the Neros there for literally Trigger. That was some heckin' good piloting there.
Yeah, he keeps showing off his ability to kind of put himself in like slightly dangerous positions, get the opponent to miss position, and then let the rest of his team capitalize on it. And that takes such good communication. And to be able to do that whilst pressing the amount of buttons you've got to press as a logistics pilot, it's just really impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone here has flown logistics in an alliance tournament format, but anyone who has will tell you it's incredibly intensive. And having a good logistics pilot who's able to fly that ship around, keep track of where they are, keep track of everybody's health, keep track of where the enemies are, what's going on at all the times, and all the modules they have to activate in reload and stuff. It's just chaos. And having a good one of those is worth its weight in gold. And there's a couple of really good ones in the Lance tournament over the years. Park Bank looks like he could be building up a bit of reputation based on what we've seen in these opens. So shout out to him. Speaking of shout outs, thanks 3 Tiers who dropped in a bunch of viewers and hosted us. I hope your stream went good, my dude, and I hope you got plenty of cool frags. So thanks again for that. For those of you who have joined us, we are doing the Lance Tournament Opens, which is just open practice to let teams practice for the Alliance Tournament in a couple of weeks. But the cool thing is, a bunch of these teams are going to be invited next week to a special invitational where there's a chance to win a special edition frigate from Alliance Tournament 17. So the first confirmed prize ship recipients will be known next week, which is pretty cool. The rest of them won't be known until the end of the Alliance Tournament. It is confirmed, which I think is pretty dope. DTM, that match was hype AF. Like, what was that like for you?
You know, I love when matches are close, and even in the midst of it, one of the things that can come out of how important the first, 60 seconds of a match is that you can have matches that feel like the winners sort of, broadcasted ahead of time. You can see the writing sort of on the wall, but matches like that where it comes down to the wiring, it comes down to people's piloting. At the same time that Parbank did an absolute amazing job in his own arrows, we saw the tank that Baltram put up, absolutely proving that he deserves his spot as the 7th Hokage of the Hidden Leaf Village. Definitely one of those things.
Awesome. And moderator, what about for you? Like, what did you think? First of all, actually, I've got a question for you. Navy Slicers, not usually a ship we see in the Alliance tournament. What was your thoughts there?
I mean, I think that that's going to be kind of emblematic of someone who brings an anime meme name, is that they're basically saying to themselves, okay, guys, we made it into the tournament. We're going to bring kind of this kind of a little bit of a meme ship. Slicers, not exactly known for their survivability or their ability to be generally good tournament ships. They're known for being excellent kiting ships on Tranquility. Somewhere out in Chicago, Chester died a little bit when he saw 3 of them brought to this event. But pretty interesting to see that play out. I think it might have been a little bit closer had they gone with a little bit more kind of on-meta comp, but I'm glad that their team was having fun with it.
Yeah, definitely. And before the match, there was a Slicer Fit posted in Twitch chat on our stream, twitch.tv /Eve_NT_TV, by a member of that team. And then when I saw them appear in the system and warping in Slicers, I had a little thinking moment that perhaps he had literally just big brained himself into posting their fit into Twitch rather than into a channel somewhere in game, which is superb moves. But luckily, no one seemed to notice, and I thought I better not point it out. And no one else noticed it, so there you go, leaking their dank fits. But it did look like they were just noses in the highs and no guns in their slicers. So just tackle slicers, the meme tackle slicer. But somehow they managed to pull it off. Quick shout out at the moment to Viter, by the way, who makes a lot of our tools here at EVNT. The server that we have that we host a lot of things on for tournaments is all maintained by him, and a bunch of the cool graphs and so on that you'll see in Alliance Tournament. You saw the previous in Alliance Tournament 16 and coming up in Alliance Tournament 17 are tools that he developed. If you have your Amazon Prime subscription, feel free to drop it onto us. We use that money to pay for the servers, basically, to pay for the server that hosts all this stuff, and some of Vita's time. Because other than that, he's doing it all by himself. So yeah, make sure you drop some likes, drop some follows, drop some subscribes if you can. It all helps us bring these dope ass tournaments to you for cool special edition frigates. Misty, we
Hello.
have a final between the minions and literally triggered. That's going to be interesting. What do you think there?
I've been a massive fan of the minions. Well, I haven't always been a massive fan of the minions. We used to live in Thera together, and we weren't always on the best of terms. But over the years, I've spoken with their leader Vuri a bunch. So I'm really hoping that they can pull out a win in the finals here. For Literally Triggered, I think their performance has been stellar as well. They've shown that they're a really strong team, at least today, going up against those triple Vargas from the Ancients with their Foons and all of that kind of stuff, coming well prepared as well for some of their matches. So I'm hoping they're going to be really good matches, really fun to watch, really close, so we can get some hype casting from DTM again. But I'm hoping that Minions ekes that win out at the end of the day.
Well, it looks like we have breaking news from the gardening team, Hidden Leaf Village Ninja Assassins Esports Squad. I think that might be their name. I'm not sure. It's just a combination of those words in some random order. Have decided to forfeit their third place match. So local is primary. Take third place here. With a forfeit from the Hidden Leaf Village Ninja guys, deciding not to compete on this final match. So therefore, we will be going straight to the finals. We don't have to worry about some hidden ass guys losing to local as primary. We can go straight to the winners bracket, just pure winners from now on, which is pretty cool. So yeah, bye Hidden Leaf guys. See you in the Alliance tournament. You're done. DTM. Let's talk about coming up to the finals. What do you think of the minions versus Literally Triggered? So we heard from Misty, mentioned a bit about the minions. I think you've previously done a bit with Literally Triggered. Is that correct, or am I making that up?
Yeah. I've done a little bit with. I've never flown with them or anything like that, but I've definitely fought against them. They tried to drop me constantly when I was in their space, and it just never worked because I'm just the superior pilot. And that's okay. They, eventually they learn from that, and clearly they've come into the open series, especially today, running. I would say I wouldn't say they're abnormal comps or anything like that, but it's definitely running really, really well. I think we're seeing Parbank come into this and be absolutely crucial to their team. I don't know what they do without him. I don't know about you guys, but watching him fly, both today and beforehand, has been an absolute joy.
Yeah, and I think we're just confirming some points and if that affects it at all, as mentioned in Twitch, but I don't think it does. I'm pretty sure the 8 invites for next week are still locked in. Nothing changes there. So, I mean, questions from Twitch chat, please feel free to drop them in. We're happy to answer them. Meanwhile, just point out, we are still in Jita. I don't know who's been spinning around out there in his Tempest or Vargar, but he's been doing it for pretty much the whole show. So big shout out to him. I think that's pretty cool. He's spinning in a pretty dope way. So make sure you get out there, drop some fireworks, see if you can find the window. That'd be pretty cool. So always what happens when we have those Jita cams during the breaks is people find the hidden camera and they get the ship right up to it and park it. And yeah, so I'm just going to bring in Misty. How have you been enjoying the whole thing so far?
You caught me mid-yawn.
That was tactical.
Yeah, nice. No, I've been enjoying it. I haven't been able to catch every Saturday session that's been run so far, so I have probably missed a few interesting matches and setups. But I've followed the general story, I think, for a couple of teams, Minions being one of them, and how they've performed. So I think it's been a really interesting kind of weekend segment that's been run over the past couple months. It's like I mentioned earlier, it's been a great opportunity for new teams to really brush up on their tournament etiquette, basically, and make sure that when they land on the day, they don't fuck things up, So I think it's a really great opportunity for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually really daunting as as a captain. I've done it when I remember my first time doing it. When you get all this information coming at you from the referees, and you have all there's deadlines, and you have like boxes we have to put in bans and things like that, which we're not doing today, but the point still stands. It is intimidating. It's very easy to spaghetti and click the wrong thing and accidentally ban out like a porpoise or something like that, and then just panic and then bring complete wrong comp and then die. So having a little bit of time to practice that in the real environment against teams with the deadlines, with the schedule, with a referee telling you you're moving now, whether you like it or not, is pretty cool. But Misty, the Alliance Tournament 17 itself, it will be broadcast from CCP Studios in Iceland on the 1st and 2nd weekends of November, which is the 6th and 7th and 13th and 14th of November. You're part of the crew that's coming out to Iceland, are you not?
That is correct. Yeah, I'm going to be in Iceland along with a bunch of you guys, and also Suetonia and Laz, I believe, as well. So should be fairly interesting. I'll be sure to wear some floral polos and try and look good for the camera.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got the EVNT crew who are producing most of this stuff today. We'll be out there to produce it at the CCP studios, and we have some fantastic commentators, as Misty mentions. Misty, Suetonia, and Lazarus Telraven will be joining us out there as desk analysts, and a whole bunch of the guys that you've been hearing over the last couple of weeks will be joining as commentators remotely. I can't wait. I think it's going to be super exciting, and it is. I mean, for me, it's the return of Alliance Tournament in its proper format, which I'm super excited to see. Jin Tan, you were a team. You were in a team earlier on in this particular run. Unfortunately, I think you guys got knocked out in the feeders. How is it having Alliance Tournament back?
Oh, it is great. It's effectively brought me back to the game. I think, as many people might know, I took a break for a while to focus on real life, and the Alliance Tournament is a great way to stay involved in the game in a way that you can schedule to some degree. You know when your practices are going to be every week. You don't have to sit around and be available for pings and things like that. You can really just get in there, get a ton of content done, and do it in a way that really matters as well. When you are practicing for the tournament, you've only got 2 to 3 months to prepare for the feeders. And that's not a lot of time to prepare a bunch of compositions, to get a bunch of practices in if you're only doing it once a week. So every single session matters. It's a great way to kind of engage with EVE Online on a different level, maybe to playing as an FC in nullsec as I did historically.
And how did you find it being in the Alliance Tournament as a team member and a competitor, rather than previously in a lot of the tournaments, Alliance tournaments for a couple of years, Alliance Open, and various other tournaments like the Streamfleet Invitational and so on? You've been part of the commentary crew and part of the desk crew, but yet this time you chose to focus on being a player. What was that like for you this time?
Yeah, it's something where I've had a lot of experience with it in the past, because I've actually been a part of 3 separate CVA Alliance tournament teams. It's just that every single time I was on the CVA Alliance tournament team, our executive failed to submit us for the Alliance tournament, so we did not take part. But this has been great. I was able to play in my first match. I burnt out my prop mod, as all great pilots should, in the Alliance tournament, and I have a 100% win rate, as I was actually hosting the feeders the day Fox lost. Therefore, I'm retiring permanently from competing in the Alliance tournament with a 100% win record. I'll be at the top of every single leaderboard forever.
1-1. There you go. The perfect record. So there you have it. If you want to recruit Jintan for your Alliance Tournament team next year for Alliance Tournament 18, hashtag confirmed, then 100% win record. That's pretty cool. So make sure you get that on board. Yeah, I mean, I'm just excited. I'm really looking forward to it. Bayart J, I'm sure you're looking forward to it as well. You've been working so hard in the behind the scenes to arrange all the logistics to organize a lot of these tournaments in terms of the feeders and these open series. How is it for you seeing this project come to fruition?
Yeah, I'm really excited.
I'd make sure you're unmuted this time.
I think I'm unmuted. Yeah. Let me just double check that. Yeah, I'm really excited to be going. It's going to be really, really fun. I'm a little bit anxious as well. Obviously, there's quite a lot of big pressure there, big project, but it's going to be a blast, I think. and it's going to be really awesome to have all the CCP crew there with us working as well. So we'll be able to have the community team involved in the broadcast, and hopefully a couple of developers too, which would be really awesome. And rumor has it that the Alliance tournament desk is alive. It's been dug out of a storage facility that CCP have, and it is in one piece, and I saw an image of it with the light on. So we should be able to sit behind that famous AT desk that existed between what, like 80, was it 12 to 16, 17? I can't remember, I lost track now, but anyway. So that should be really fun.
So what's it like for you? You got into organizing tournaments, doing corp tournaments, and then in some of the earlier Eventy meets in 2014 in Nottingham, you ran a couple of 2v2 tournaments, which, by the way, one of those gave away an AT prize ship, a Malice, if I'm not mistaken. Did you think at that point when you were organizing corp tournaments and these little 2v2s at these live events that you would be sitting here in 2021, having organized and been the lead producer on not one Alliance tournament, but now a second, and also the Alliance Open?
No. This is the short answer. I wouldn't have guessed that. But yeah, I'm happy I'm here. It's been fun.
Quite a journey.
Yeah, I've taken breaks here and there. Like after Alliance Tournament 16 was definitely burnt out for a while. But like, there was an upside to the pandemic for some people in that we got to spend extra time at home, and that gave me some more time to plan Alliance Open, which was really fun. And that kind of like gave me the confidence to make a pitch to CSB for us to help them with all the broadcasting for Alliance Tournament 17. And so that worked out pretty well. And yeah, I'm really excited. We're learning a lot of new things at the moment. We're going to be doing more of the so in previous years we've kind of like hired techs, third-party techs, to do the teching for us when we've done Eventy studio streams, but this year we're doing it ourselves, so we're like upskilling ourselves at the same time, which has been really fun. So yeah, it's cool. Good project. I love it. I loved Alliance Tournament ships. Like be a couple of matches today where I just like really got my adrenaline, like when it was like one or two ships in it in terms of victory, and it's really, really close. Like even after 11, 12 years of being involved in tournaments in some way, because I was an Alliance tournament pilot and captain before running tournaments, it still gets me excited. So
yeah, I mean, speaking of exciting matches, we've had a couple. The last few matches have been quite good, actually. Localist Primary went up against the Minions. The Minions won that one 58 points to 57 in a nail biter. And then we also had Hidden Leaf Village Ninja just losing out to Literally Triggered in the last 30 seconds of that last match. So make sure you check out the VODs of that one, especially with some hype commentary by some of our crew here. DTM, newest addition really to the Eventy commentator crew. How are you enjoying it? How are you getting on with doing these matches with us?
So I've been running tournaments for a long time, and a couple years ago I ran EVCS tournaments, which they did not go the best. It was my first time running EVE tournaments, and we ran them on TQ. So not having to worry about doing any of the extra stuff that comes along with production or comes along with like wrangling teams and worrying about rule sets and how you earn points and shenanigans like that has been a real good joy. You guys have been fantastic as far as like getting stuff done and letting the commentators come in and just do their stuff. I don't think there's a better org out there. I know there was another one. I don't know if you guys remember Easy Esports, but he wanted to run one too, and I don't know how his went, but I imagine it was not nearly as smooth or as great as this crew is.
Just shout out to DTM there. Like he ran a whole series of like, what was it, like 8 weekends, or it was quite a long series.
It was 2.5 months, 2.5 to 3 months of weekends.
And it was on Tranquility, which was absolute madness. I remember saying to you at the time, "What you like? This is not going to work out." But you actually like you put yourself down a little bit there, but like you actually did pull it off, and I really enjoyed watching it. So like, don't put yourself down there. That was impressive.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun. I think what I learned from it is. We were under the impression from CCP. I did not go directly to CCP. Somebody went to CCP for me, and essentially they were like, "Oh, like tournaments on the test server aren't allowed," and that was my fault. I should have gone directly to CCP and gotten a yes or no. Had we known that, we would have never ran tournaments on TQ. But Thunderdome wasn't available at the time. Thank thank Lord, like a big shout out to the community team and the team of people who keeps the Thunderdome tournament server running. It's a passion. Sorry, it's like a work of passion. It's a work of love for a lot of these people who really care about the community and tournaments.
Yeah, absolutely. At the moment, it is being babysat by CCP Aurora and CCP Swift. And CCP Swift seems to be developing what you could almost say is a fetish for kicking the Thunderdome server when it fails to boot, because he seems to revel in it. He was almost hoping it goes down so he gets to run in and boot that thing, which is becoming slightly worrying, especially when we have to share a studio with him in Iceland if this continues. So we will report back on that one. But one thing I want to touch on that both RJ and DTM mentioned is the effort involved behind the scenes to run these things. I mean, DTM did a bunch of it himself for the previous tournament, and then we have an amazing team of volunteers at EVNT that it does just a ginormous amount of work behind the scenes to make these things possible, so that it is smooth and easy and great to run them. People like Amy Muff and General Stargazer right now are sitting in a different channel, so they can't even hear me. They are refereeing, and they're the ones that are pushing the buttons and just making it so that we can sit and talk to you and not worry about the actual matches getting started on time. We have people like Discreet Error, who's doing a lot of the sort of the admin tasks. He's like doing the polls on Twitch and just generally modding out and stuff. And I mean, that doesn't. There's a huge team of people in the back that contribute to this. Not only volunteers, but also people at CCP giving up some of their spare time. So from us, thank you for everyone who makes this possible. And as I ramble on, I have seen players have appeared in local as we're getting ready to move towards the first of our best of three final here on week 6 of the EVNT Open Series between the Minions and Literally Triggered. This should be good. This should be good. I mean, this is for pride at this point because both of these teams have cemented their position in the Invitational next week to win that special edition frigate. So at this point now, it's just for pride. They've got that opportunity.
The winning team do get 500 plex, so there's a little bit in it for them.
There you go. They get 500 plex. Fantastic. So it's not just pride; it's pride and 500 plex. But yeah, I mean, moderator, you got some thoughts on how this is going to go? Mod? Mod's busy doing other things. He's probably 3D crafting Elite Navy Slicer fits up for Chester, who's hurting somewhere still from seeing that last match. What about you, Jin? What do you think about this matchup?
I think this is going to go all 3 matches. These teams are both really good. They have a lot of experience as well in best of 3s. Like, one of the great things about this open series is the fact that a lot of these teams that have come in from the feeders, and that's where we've seen them previously, have really been able to prove their tournament chops and get some experience in these kind of like longer series. This will be the 3rd best of 3 that the Minions are playing in here.
Yeah, and moderator, I believe you are back now, slightly modulator than before. Can you give me your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, so I'm really excited to see how Minions and Triggered both play this out. Both playing for Shipskin, so I'm probably going to see some of the best of their comps as we go into this. Literally Triggered, having just come off of a nail-biting victory, same with the Minions. So I'm hoping that we get to see a 3rd match in a row go to the very last minute of the end of the series here, as we have the last match for today.
Perfect. And speaking of the last match of today, let's hand over to the arena for this first of best of 3. So this is no longer single elimination. You don't have to win this one to win everything, but it definitely does help. So this one's going to be the Minions and Literally Triggered with your casters Misty and Jintan.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the arena to watch the Minions versus Literally Triggered. I'm joined by Jintan, and Jin, do you want to take away the Minions comp for us?
Yeah, the Minions have Balgorn, Vindicator, Fleet Tempest, Magus, Pontifex, Double Deacon, Heretic, Vengeance, Purifier. And what have Literally Triggered brought here?
Literally Triggered have brought 2 Typhoon fleet issues and a standard Typhoon, a Guardian, a Pontifex, a Confessor, a Vengeance, a Mauler, a Comet, and a Garma. So they've really tried to sprinkle in as many different types of ships as possible, so I have to read out the full list. And one thing I did want to mention before match start is that the Typhoon that Literally Triggered have brought has come in at the furthest possible distance of 50k, well behind the rest of his team, which I think is a great choice, as Typhoons aren't typically as tanky as their faction counterparts, which means that he's not really in harm's way back here, but still able to apply his full damage as this match now commences.
Something else interesting that it offers is it means that they have a really, really powerful utility option to prevent a backline dive on Park Bank. He's going to be able to throw out neutralizers or smart bombs, or at least a grapple to shield off frigates back there.
Yeah, we can see that webs are coming out now onto the Typhoon fleet issues, presumably from this Balgorn, but now the Vindicator, I think, is also burning into range.
Oh, here we go, though. Those Tempest fleet, the heavy armor is just diving in here. They've really tackled down Jathy, and you can see the amount of DPS that's being poured in on him there with that attack bar lighting up from the minions.
Yeah, it's important to note that because the Typhoon fleet issues and the Typhoon have a much further range, we're seeing a lot more damage coming out into this Tempest fleet issue for now. But as the Vindicator gets on top of this Typhoon fleet issue, I expect that the damage is going to ramp up and he's probably going to drop first.
Yeah, look at that. You can see that Zardath is holding there about 67. A few chunks starting to go there, but he's at 60%. And the chunks getting taken out of Jathy just don't, it's incomparable, the amount of DPS that's getting put out there. He's going to go down here very, very shortly. And with that, Zardath might have a chance to stabilize. It's on Literally Triggered here now to make a play, to spread out and try and neutralize this rush here from the minions.
I think the important thing to note is that a Vengeance has died on the side of Literally Triggered, but there's no pressure coming out onto the minion support wing here. So the Purifier, again, I have to note it since we're going up against battleships, it's not having any issues. It's just kind of sitting pretty. Okay, now it's being burned on top of by a Typhoon fleet issue. Purifier is sitting really close for what it is. It should probably be a little bit further away, but it does a lot of damage.
Yeah, especially when you can fit javelins and just fire from across the entire arena. That was some great play, though, there from Jathy, just squeezing out every last bit of EHP he possibly could from his Typhoon fleet issue, giving a chance for some some structure damage there on Zardath. But it's not quite enough. You can see he's starting to rep up a bit of armor here, as it looks like these Typhoons are on reload, and they're now switching off to the support wing as well, taking down Maddox and just treading the support wing, really.
Yeah, some potential poor play coming out from the Literally Triggered side here. The Guardian of Literally Triggered is very effective at repping. In fact, reps more than an Ineris, depending on how it's fit. But it's sitting extremely far away from the Typhoon fleet issue of JA, who burned away from the Minions battleship core. Apart from he burned in the wrong direction, so now his team is split, and he's separated by himself below the kind of planetary plane here.
Yeah, this is the power of that armor control comp too. If you spread out, they have so much ability to lock you in place and just DPS you down. This is great play here from the minions. It looks like Zardath is going to survive almost easily.
Yeah, I think that the Typhoons just came off reload again, so we're seeing some damage coming out into that Tempest fleet issue, but with only one Typhoon still remaining and no other real damage dealers. I mean, the Mauler and the Confessor can do some damage, but probably won't stand up long against a Vindicator and Tempest fleet issue if they get into range. So yeah, I think it's a pretty solid win for the minions at this point, unless they end up boundarying somehow.
It looks like that Balgorn is burning across the field as well. He's about to probably have a huge impact here, just passing by the center of the field, which their frigates are just controlling, sitting there with the Federation Navy Comet, the Pontifex, all just tackled up and waiting for DPS to be applied to it when it's available.
Yeah, so we've seen that, this setup with the Guardian behind it, which, as I mentioned before, is probably one of the strongest remote wrapping logistics cruisers you can get. Losing to a double Deacon setup. How do you feel about logistics cruisers in this format and the comps that we've seen so far?
They're really, really pricey. If you can execute with them, they're great. But man, It is so difficult, especially when you can put out so much potential threats by even foregoing logistics, as we've seen earlier on in the day with that triple Typhoon, triple Oracle composition. I don't know.
I think
don't
I'd
know.
have to agree. Yeah, I mean, I think that having those logistics frigates, even though we see Agama going down there, but with those logistics frigates, it may take up 2 slots on your team instead of 1, but it leaves so many more points on the table for you to round out the rest of your team with things that are perhaps a little bit tankier instead of, as we're seeing the standard Typhoon fleet, rather just the standard Typhoon, which is paper tank. You can see it jumping up and down because it just doesn't have that EHP that the Typhoon fleet issues have.
Yeah, I have a controversial opinion, which is if you actually have a worse logistics pilot, putting them in a T2 logistics is better because they have so much survivability, and if you're able to chuck a bunch of rep drones on them, you can potentially get people to overcommit on them and still win the fight that way. But if you've got 2 really good individual pilots that can fly a logistics frigate well and always seem to slip out of trouble, those people are just, that is such an insane advantage.
I think I'd have to agree with that. I think that the logistics cruiser typically is also a lot slower than a frigate will be, and it has a much better range. So you don't have to worry too much about positioning, which is just an extra stress, right? That you add to your logistics frigate pilots, given the fact that they can only rep out to about 30 in optimal, perhaps like 20, 30 with some effectiveness. They're a lot squishier. They have to work in tandem. They have to communicate the entire time. These aren't things that you have to worry about when you're the only logistics pilot in that Guardian, which is slower, so you don't have to worry about positioning, tankier, and able to take those rep bots perhaps a little bit better as well.
Yeah, and it looks like this is going to be just a straight up slam dunk victory here from the minions. I thought they might lose Zardas at least, a token morale piece there for literally triggered, but this is some incredible stuff, and we don't have any conquest rules. So the minions are free to bring this composition again next time. So we might get a look at potentially what literally triggered thinks is a counter composition to this heavy armor control setup. And these are comps that both these teams have brought previously as well, so they seem to think that this is the baseline of the meta, perhaps.
Yeah, I think it might also be that they know what these comps do. They like to get some practice in these comps. Perhaps they're not the best comps that they think they can bring, but they're not comps that they're necessarily that they feel like they need to hide from the competition. So they're able to bring it in this open format, get some practice in with piloting, which I think is important as well. And I think the Minions team and the Literally Triggered team, their comps give them enough opportunity to practice communication and piloting without having to do anything really tricky, right? They can practice screening, they can practice damage application or keeping range in a variety of different formats without giving away the game when it comes to the actual tournament itself.
Yeah, and it's been great fun to watch them bring out some interesting stuff though, because it hasn't just been wow. Okay, I think that was a boundary. Yep,
Yeah, you
that was
tried
a
to jump
boundary.
Edge of Glory. Yeah.
All right, enough vamping. Let's head back to the studio and dissect this a little more.
We who have seen war will never stop seeing it. In the silence of the night, we will always hear the screams. So this is our story. Wolves amongst strangers.
Did you know that anything can happen in Eltric fleets?
I had a question time, but I couldn't jump. I'm jumping now.
Are you still shaving your balls? Jesus.
Wow, you must have some big balls, you.
Yeah, literally anything.
All right, guys, welcome back there. So the first match is done, and we're going forward with the rest of it. Minions taking it 100-0 there over Literally Triggered in a pretty convincing victory for that first matchup. Parkbank and the Guardian not able to carry his team to victory as he'd done in previous matches. Misty, I want to just dial in on something that you mentioned in passing in that match. You talked about the strength of Guardian reps versus an Aneros. So what's the logic behind choosing the Guardian over the Aneros? Like, what's the benefits of both?
Sure. So kind of there's a couple different factors to keep in mind when you're picking a Guardian versus an Anera. So in a tournament setting where we do see ECM quite a bit, we've seen Griffins and Scorpions today, alongside some Kitsunes, as a matter of fact. The Guardian might be the weaker pick because it only has 2 mids. So you'll have your prop mod, which will probably just be an AB, and you'll have your Cat Booster. And that will feed you capacitor so you can run your reps, and it will allow you to move around, but it won't protect you from fast moving ships because you're slow, and it won't protect you from ECM because you don't have anything to boost your own sensor strength. Aneroses have, I think, 4 mids, if I'm correct in that, which allows them to potentially dual prop so they can move quickly around the arena, allowing their team to be a bit more flexible in positioning. But they can also fit local sensor boosters to boost their own sensor strength or lock range. Cat Booster as well as an AB. So they're a lot more flexible. But the trade-off is that they're less tanky and they fit less reps than the Guardian does. So it depends on what you kind of want to do, what the bans are, and what you think you'll be going up against, really.
Nice. And Jin, you mentioned a little bit in that one about the difference between bringing a T2 logistics cruiser and the T2 logistics frigates. I say we see quite a mix, and maybe more these days of the frigates. But why? What was your thoughts on putting like a less experienced pilot into the logistics cruiser? Do you just think that it's harder to fly those smaller ships, and if so, why?
Yeah, you've got to be able to react much faster, and you just have so little room for error. There was a lot of things that Misty was talking about as well, about positioning and the positional awareness as well that you've got to have. A lot more ships are threats to you in a logistics frigate, that are lethal. If you're in a scimitar and you get tackled by a Swipple, yeah, that's pretty bad, but maybe someone can peel for you. If you get tackled by a logistics frigate, if you get tackled by a Swipple and you're in a burst, you're dead. There's nothing that's going to save you, unfortunately.
I mean, the small sig radius does mean that depending on what you go up against, you can just sig tank. You can get. We've seen a few times in matches before where you've got these logistics frigates and they get right in and just orbit, like I say, an enemy Balgon, for example, because its guns just won't apply. I mean, it's a poor example because it's got newts, but you understand the point I'm getting at.
Yeah, there's a lot of tricks that you can use as well to kind of increase your survivability. And the main advantage as well that you get from them is that effectively it's the difference between having, the standard two big ships, one mid-range ship and logistics, and having, either three high-end ships and one mid-range ship, plus your logistics frigates, or even as you see in these rush teams, 5 mid-range ships or something along those lines, that can just let you put out so much pressure as a threat to your opponent that you just can't field if you spend all the points and don't take up the slots in the way that you do by using a logistics cruiser.
Moderator, we're seeing this last match, for example, we had a fairly traditional looking armor control setup going up against another somewhat traditional Fleet Typhoon setup, although the Comet and Garma may be less traditional there. What in the last couple of years, what do you think has been the more dominant sort of strategy for the winning teams in terms of comps and metas? Has there been one sort of standout thing that's been just consistent over the last few years, or has it been very different every tournament?
I mean, we've seen the tournament meta shift pretty drastically um, between different events just because of the rule structure. I mean, back a couple years ago, we used to see something like 8 battle cruisers be kind of tournament defining, and then TCP said, "Oh wait, no, don't do that." And then they said you can only bring so many battle cruisers, and then we've moved on to things like Leshaks being very powerful, and then in the Event Open, we saw this kind of like Nighthawk Loki composition be really good. Now it seems like people have sort of figured out a little bit better how to deal with that. And the points change on that a little bit, so it's a little bit less effective in this event. And now we're seeing in minions with this kind of armor comp as you were describing. They're bringing kind of just a scrim composition, kind of a default. We know that this isn't the best composition we have in our playbook, but it's pretty good, and it gives our team and our pilots good individual practice against another decent tournament team.
Nice. And Misty, when I come back to you, do you think there's been a sort of a defined meta starting to appear in some of these opens that you expect to see carried forward? And of course, do you expect to see carried forward into the main tournament itself, or do you think a lot of teams are still holding what might be the lock key comps close to their chest?
Honestly, I think that some teams are going to bring, mirror images of some of the setups that we've seen during this open series and during the feeders that were run earlier, because they are strong setups and they're not quite cookie cutter in terms of their design, but in terms of how you execute them, they're fairly straightforward. You just get on top of your target, you do damage, you win or you lose. Simple enough. I'm sure that there are some quirky comps out there which teams have not shared with us yet, which will focus around control, or they'll take a standard ship and do something really weird with it so that you don't expect it when you're landing on grid. So I think it will be a mix of the standard, what we've already seen, and some new stuff that might still lose to it.
Awesome. And I'm being told that Jebby hosted us earlier on. So thank you very much, Jebby, for the host. And welcome to the EVNT 1817 Open Series Week 6. Week 6 of 6. And next week is the Invitational, Special Edition Invitational, where the teams have a chance to win an Alliance Tournament 17 prize ship. It's a Special Edition frigate. It's based on Mordor's Legion. It's going to be pretty cool, I think. So make sure you come back next week to see that. And in the meantime, if you want to give us some of Amelon's money by dropping your Prime sub on us, then that would be fantastic. It helps pay for the servers and things like that. I hear myself in the background on BRJ's thing there, so I think he's talking to me, but something's not working. So I'll get back to you if that's the case. DTM 135. How's things? How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm sitting here. I'm looking at two teams sitting in the finals, and you guys are kind of talking about metas, which I think brings into a really good question about how we sort of look at the metas in general in sort of this competitive sense. If you look at games, they all kind of take different approaches. You can go with like League of Legends, where the meta will change week to week, month to month, constantly, and then you have games like StarCraft, the Brood War, the original, that sort of sits there and lets players figure it out. And I think that one of the biggest benefits EVE Online gets to see, and tournament play in particular gets to see, is sort of almost a mix between the two, because the players are always trying to push the envelope really, really hard, and so they're always trying out different things. They're always theory crafting different things, and year to year as we come back, we kind of see slight changes to point values and things like that, as we sort of look towards the rest of the EVE meta and how it might change tomorrow or in the future. What do you guys kind of think of the idea that CCP, or in particular the tournament organizers and tournament play inside of EVE Online, sort of has struck this balance between the players' ingenuity pushing the meta forward, and then balancing, and for tournaments pushing the meta forward?
I mean, I'm always a big fan of. EVE's a sandbox, right? So I'm a big fan of all the meta stuff that goes on, sort of outside of the actual rules of the tournament. That's still perfectly legal within the game. Spying on other teams' practices, infiltrating their alliances and into their teams, and trying to get information and things like that. The meta being defined very much in a combination with the players and the games. But at the same time, I think it's good for CCP to shake up the rules between these different tournaments to stop it getting stale, but not too much, because it's always nice to have a bit of consistency. You mentioned League of Legends. EVNT used to run a EVNT Major League and Minor League, and we used to sort of League of Legends style pick ban system, sort of
Yeah.
an ABBA type thing for picking pre-fit ships as a sort of entry level tournament for people, which we ran for a couple of seasons, which was a lot of fun. I played League of Legends for maybe like half an hour, and then I had to undergo extensive chemotherapy, but I did recover, which is great, and I'm back here now in EVE Online. Bay, do you want to talk briefly about those EVE major minor leagues? Like, what was the ban system like for you? Like, League of Legends was the main inspiration, right?
I mean, League of Legends, like many other MOBAs and stuff as well, like Dota or whatever. I think I was really happy with how that went, and it is something I'll potentially bring back one day. I think that we were over ambitious in how long we ran those seasons for. They were really hard work to run with a volunteer group, but I think the format in itself was pretty satisfying to watch and take part in. From the feedback I had from most of the people who took part, I think like only one team actually didn't show up for a match out of like hundreds, so that says to me that people enjoyed taking part in it. The prizes were good, the balance was good. I was incredibly smug after season 1. So we had 2 leagues we had a minor and major league, and I think it was 8 teams in each. And the captains were all telling me that the way I'd calculated the pick and ban system was blue. Whoever was blue was always going to win every single match. Like, multiple captains were like, this is really unbalanced. This is a terrible format. And at the end of like 100 matches or whatever, it was exactly 50-50. So I was pretty smug in the way that I designed it. So it did work pretty well. But the downside of that format was that it was designed around ships that fittings that I created, and intentionally kind of tried to balance out all of the available ships to make them sort of roughly equal and give them different roles. And some captains really enjoyed that because they didn't have to theorycraft fittings. They could just show up on the day, pick the ships they wanted to based on what they thought was going to win, and then they could just run the match really easily. And other captains actually hated that because it limited their theory crafting. So it was kind of, it was definitely good for newer teams, newer players, I think. So it's something potentially bring back in the future for kind of aimed at 5-man teams who have not got time to invest in theory crafting.
Yeah, and speaking of tournaments like that, Jintan, what do you think about the sort of the pre-fit ships idea that we had during not only the EVE major minor leagues, but also the Kadari Corporation Cup at FanFest versus the full free-form meta of being able to fit your own ships?
So there's a couple of major advantages, and from my perspective as someone who's primarily a commentator, one of the big ones is knowing exactly what's going on as a commentator and being able to guide the audience through it. You know, when you have to rely on, oh my god, I'm literally trying to look at the effects that are happening on a ship as I'm talking 100 words a minute, it's quite a difficult thing to do. When you can study the fits beforehand, think of all the interactions, you can see them play out a couple of times and you know what to expect, that helps you to kind of distinguish exactly what's going on in terms of individual piloting and explain that to an audience. But you do lose out some of the beauty of EVE, which is how flexible it is as a system, and the fact that it will let you make incredibly terrible decisions if you think you're brave enough to try them. And sometimes those terrible decisions work out.
Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. My favorite one to mention is the teams that bring the maelstroms when they see the humongous alpha damage on Pyfa, and they think, "Wow, how could we possibly lose?" And then they turn up, and the other ship goes maybe like 2 meters per second to the side, and then that's it. They can't hit them. But it looks like we're ready to go to our next match in the best of 3 here in the EVE channel. So the minions have a series point, and also overall series point, because I'm told that this best of 3 is defining who comes first and second overall in the whole standings for the past 6 weeks. So the minions, if they win this, not only do they win today, but they basically come top of the leaderboards for the entire last 6 weeks. Literally triggered. They need to win to stand a chance to come back on that one. But let's hand over to the arena, and your commentators for this match is going to be DTM and moderator.
Good to go.
Yeah, so it looks like we have literally triggered and both and the minions choosing to do exactly the same compositions that they had in the last match, with the exception of Pishaki's Crucifier in the previous match having been a Comet. I really like the choice of swapping out a Crucifier for that, giving tracking disruption to be effective against a Fleet Tempest and a Vindicator, and a Belgorn to a limited extent as well. DTM?
Maybe we have a connection issue there for DTM, so I will jump in right now. Yeah, I mean, everything you say, I completely and utterly agree with. DTM's just dropped off, so he's definitely got a connection issue. Match has got 8 seconds to go to get underway. We've seen this match before. Both teams basically bringing what they think is going to win. I'm interested to see how this Balgorn Vindicator combo does, though. What do you think, moderator? Are they just going to brawl in straight away, or do you think there's going to be some kiting going on?
Well, I mean, it seems like the teams have answered that question for us. We see that the Vengeance and the Confessor have already gotten on top of the Vindicator and tackled Trinity Weaver. Vengeance, unfortunately, burning out past and slingshotted himself. The Fleet Typhoon, or Fleet Tempest rather, of Zardik is burning into the Typhoon of J.A. Loyes, and it seems like this match is going largely the same way that we saw the previous match, with I want to say some of the same mistakes in execution, possibly.
Yeah, so the Confessor and the Vengeance, just a huge amount of E-War on top of them. You look at the size of that control bar there for the minions, but they are tanking well. So Parkbank in his Guardian got all these reps on it. They've got probably a cloud of rep bots surrounding them right now, keeping them alive. Meanwhile, the Purifier this time going down for the minions, or was going down for the minions, now being repped back up, but removing that from the field could be a good decision for Literally Triggered this time, because getting that off the field is a huge amount of damage. But that Fleet Tempest of Zardath is just kind of chilling in high shield. Like, at the moment, it's Literally Triggered are in not a great situation.
Yeah, that Vindicator and the Tempest fleet issue are sitting on top of the Typhoon of J.A. Loyes at 0, and unfortunately, Crucifier tracking disruption doesn't really matter too much when you're a battleship hitting another battleship at those kind of ranges. Zardak is taking some damage, but just J.A. is just going down, I want to say, so much faster, but we see a damage swap onto Ragnar Ragnarsson, quite the Viking name in his Confessor, and he may well have a Viking funeral as he's getting burned down his armor. At the same time, Jay Aloy is dropping down into hull and spiking. Parkbank has been an excellent pilot, but he's going to have to choose one of these two to revive here, and it looks like it's going to be JA that gets sacrificed here.
Yeah, I think that's a bad decision. I think he has to put everything onto the Fleet Typhoon and sacrifice that Confessor right now. If they keep that Fleet Typhoon alive, they might be able to still break something. But I feel if it goes down, it's going to be just not enough damage because they're already struggling. Both Deacons, though, of the minions, I've got newts on them, so they're going to be potentially struggling under cap. Oh god, it's so close. J8 has got an absolute sliver of structure. Now he's got none. He's dead. So there you go. Can they still break Zardas? I don't think so. I think this might be it for Literally Triggered.
It appears that the Confessor has dropped as well. And I mean, I almost hate to say that it's just going to be the kind of the same mistakes and everything played out, but you really do get a kind of a sense of deja vu when Literally Triggered chooses to go once again with Fleet Tempest, and with those, sorry, Literally Triggered actually going with Typhoons here. I gotta kind of wonder, do you have to go rapid heavies every match? You know that the minions have been liking these battleship cores. Do you choose to maybe swap to cruises? Do you go torpedoes to try to push damage? I mean, you can't just keep running into the same thing and not changing up your game plan at all and just getting walled like this.
I feel like if you're winning with it, then stick with what you're doing well. You know, we see that a lot of times. Sometimes teams, they're winning and then they out-meta themselves and they try and pivot last minute, thinking that they're being smart because everyone knows what they've been winning with, and they just end up losing. But if you've brought almost the same matchup twice in a row and you lost last time, unless you think this is your best comp and you can just execute it better, maybe you thought you piloted poorly last time and you can make up for that and it's still a better comp, then sure, bring it. But based on what it went up against, I agree. I think you do that. You take away those rapid heavies and you bring on something with more sustained DPS and less reliant on burst, especially as minions have brought so many of these thick armor boy comps.
Yeah, I mean, this has kind of been the bread and butter of the minions throughout. You got to imagine that is something that they're rather comfortable with. And I mean, we were talking earlier about kind of these default tournament setups where Mystical Might was talking about, hey, you just do these kind of basic, kind of communication piloting things. You sort of kind of binary, either you win or you don't, and it's usually not super close one way or another. In this case, the binary appears to be just another 100-0 sweep, as Zara's is taking a fair amount of damage, but the Typhoon and the Fleet Typhoon are getting to the very end of their heavy clips, and once those go down, we're going to see him get repped all the way back up from these pair of Deacons, as the support wing of Literally Triggered is getting triggered off of the field here.
There's a stretch for you there, moderator, on that pun, but I appreciate the effort. The Fleet Typhoon of Zardas just clinging on. The two Deacons, I mean, some jams may have just landed on them, which might push Zardas under the edge, as it were, but it's definitely too little too late. Even if they break that Fleet Tempest, they have just a Fleet Typhoon and a Typhoon left for damage, really, with the Crucifier and the Garmer both scrammed, web painted, and eating turbo dick right now as they disappear very, very, very quickly. Pro tip, if you're in a Garmer, don't get scram webbed. You will not survive very long at all. 4 minutes to go in this match, but I don't think there's any chance of Literally Triggered pulling it back, as Jalthe now is got all the EWAR on him and all the DPS as he drops down as well. Can the minions, I mean, the only thing left to really debate is, can they take it 100-0 at the moment? I think they probably can.
Yeah, unfortunately, Typhoon fleet issues, even with their heavy missiles, you still kind of need tackle onto something, and the Pontifex is just surviving, keeping range, trying to just keep the links up for those pair of Typhoons, but we see Jathri now dropping down into rather low armor. Zardas is just been hovering around the same amount of armor for the last minute and a half, being sustained by those Deacons, as the Typhoon hit his reload about 45 seconds ago. And I mean, the Guardian now of Parkbank getting dropped. Good
So
fights
do
in
you think
local,
that
coming out
Literally Triggered could
shortly.
have done anything different strategy wise in this match when they warped in and saw what they were facing, or do you think it was almost guaranteed from when they warped in?
I mean, I don't think it was 100% guaranteed. They definitely had a thought process of, hey, we're going to use a Crucifier to use that tracking disruption to mitigate from the Tempest fleet issue. But one of the mistakes we saw from the Literally Triggered support wing is they got tackle on the minions' battleships, but then they kept burning and lost tackle. And once it happened, minions' battleship core was able to get on top of things. Once you're caught by a Balgorn web, you're not going anywhere. And then we just saw in the first minute and a half, it kind of play out the same way, and then the match was more or less over at that point.
Yeah, and speaking of being more or less over, it is now more over than less, as it is finished. So the minions with 100-0 sweep there of Literally Triggered. Not only do they win today, winning the glorious 500 plex and extra skins, as well as the most valuable prize of all, Pride. They top the overall tables for the entire series of Eventy's AT17 Open series, definitely securing themselves a spot. Coming into today, we had the discussion of the minions were essentially had to win a match to guarantee themselves a slot. You know, could they do? It's best of one. They had to win that first match, and then they just showed everybody up and came in and won pretty much. Well, not pretty much. They won every single match they played in today. But let's just toss it back to the studio, and we'll talk about it a bit more there.
at the start of the feeder round, can you imagine just initiative just losing?
Fucking ram them, motherfucker! We're gonna take down Dark Shines. Dark Shines is gonna get his gun off.
All
I
right, the
tell you
support.
Welcome back, guys. So there you have it. The minions, no longer minions. They are now on top. They win the whole series today, and we have the final 8 teams confirmed. Absolutely, finally, for the final confirmation for next week, and those are Odin's Call, Platinum Sensitivity, Literally Triggered, Forsaken Empire, Deepwater Hooligans, the minions, We Form Volta, and Test Alliance. Please ignore all of those teams receiving their invites and a chance to win an awesome Mordor's Legion prize ship. So that's it for us today. So thank you very much for watching. I've been Ithaca Hawk, as I always am, and will continue to be for the foreseeable. Joined by Mystical Mind, moderator, Jin Tan, Discreet Error pushing buttons, DTM135, RJ pushing extra buttons, and of course Amy Muff Muff and General Stargazer pushing the important buttons that actually teleport people around. Thank you for watching, and make sure you tune in next week and stick around where we go raid. I think we're going to go raid Joe Bain, so stick around and say hello to him as well. So anyway, thank you for watching. See you next week.